Welcome back, guys. Today we are going to see, what if Hermione brought Bella into the wizarding world? So let's get started. Kingsley, I quit. Hermione hadn't meant to be so blunt. It just sort of came out, like word vomit. I can't take this anymore. It's been months and I still get ambushed every time I go to Diagon Alley. My job isn't as fulfilling as I thought it would be. I mean, I've already passed Dobby's Law and Lupin's Law and I feel like, I don't know, like there's something more for me out there. I was thinking of going to America for a while, and visiting the last of my living relatives. They live in a small town in Washington and I think it'd be good for me to get away from the magical world for a while. I'm going to be honest with you, Hermione. The dark-skinned man paused to take a small drink of his tea. I've been expecting this for a while. I'm surprised it's taken this long. All I can say is I hope you find what you're looking for. He stood up, as did Hermione, and pulled her into a quick hug before seeing her out of his office with a promise to keep in touch. 4 hours later, Hermione had sent a note to her friends, called her uncle, and packed all her things before buying a one-way ticket to Seattle, Washington. Hermione boarded the plane and tried to calm her breathing and frazzled nerves. Even after riding on the back of a giant dragon, planes still scared her. They began their ascent and Hermione gripped the edge of her seat with white knuckles and squeezed her eyes shut. After the plane leveled out, Hermione found herself drifting off to sleep, and before she knew it, the stewardess was gently shaking her awake to buckle up and start their descent. Hermione was very thankful to be on solid ground again. As she exited the plane and breathed a sigh of relief, she walked into the terminal with a small duffel bag on her shoulder, looking for her Uncle Charlie and her cousin Bella, who were picking her up. She spotted her cousin first. She had dark chocolate hair that fell in small waves just past her shoulders and was a stark contrast to her porcelain pale skin. Her wide dark brown eyes were searching the crowd and lit up when they finally spotted Hermione. She stifled a giggle when she promptly whacked her uncle on the arm and pointed her out. They met about halfway and Hermione was pulled into a tight hug by her uncle, then her cousin. "Goodness, kiddo, I'm going to have to buy some extra guns between you and Belle's. I'm going to have a hell of a time keeping the boys away." Both cousins blushed bright red. Dad, Uncle Charlie. They made their way to baggage claim and had to wait until Hermione's large suitcases were spotted. After they were safely out of the airport, they put her suitcases into the boot of Charlie's car and made the 2-hour drive back to Forks. Bella and Hermione chatted quietly in the back seat while Charlie stayed mostly silent. "So Bella, do you have a boyfriend?" Bella looked at her dad before returning her gaze to her cousin. "Yes, his name's Edward." Charlie scoffed at the name. "Dad, anyway, we've been dating since last year. So what will you be doing since you're like what, 18? "Yeah, I'll be the 19th of September 19, you'll be 18 on the 13th, right?" Bella nodded. "I don't really know, I just had to get away from London for a while. Plus I haven't seen my favorite uncle since I was 10. Charlie chuckled. "I'm your only uncle, kiddo." She beamed at his as they pulled into a gravel driveway next to an old red truck. Home sweet home. They unloaded the car and dragged her suitcases inside and upstairs to the spare bedroom. "I'm sorry, it's not much, but we only had a little bit of time to throw it all together." Hermione smiled at him before giving him a one-armed hug. The medium-sized room had an oak desk against the far wall, a queen-sized bed, a closet, and a padded ledge on the only window in the room. "Nonsense. I find it perfect. Well, I have to go into the station for a little bit. I don't think Bella has any plans for today, so maybe you two could, I don't know, hang out or something. I know she missed you." Hermione smiled at Charlie and nodded. "That sounds fantastic. I just need to unpack and maybe eat a bit of breakfast." Charlie nodded before he left the room and called out his goodbye to the girls. Hermione had been unpacking for about 20 minutes when there was a knock on the door. "I'll get it." Hermione heard Bella call out before she walked down the stairs, only stumbling once, and pulled the door open. Hermione heard a quiet murmur of voices and decided to take a quick shower and change out of her traveling clothes. The rest of her unpacking could wait. Once Hermione was dressed in a pair of dark wash blue jeans, an old Slytherin shirt she stole from Draco, and a black zip-up hoodie, she made her way downstairs to see who was there. She walked into the living room where Bella was sitting on the couch with a pale, bronze-haired stranger. They both looked up when she entered. She gave an awkward wave. "Hello. I'm Belle's cousin, Hermione, and you must be Edward." Edward stood up and extended his hand. "Yes, it's a pleasure to meet you." Hermione almost pulled her hand back out of his icy grip. She looked up at him and he seemed to be concentrating hard, staring at her. That's when she felt the light pushing against her occlumency walls. When she checked him over again, her gaze turned accusatory. She let her walls down a little bit. "You're a vampire." If it was possible, Edward almost fell over from shock. He debated on whether to try to lie or come clean. "Don't you dare, you're not the only one who can read minds." "Does she know?" He barely moved his chin up, but Hermione caught it. She glared at her cousin's boyfriend. "I swear, if you so much as harm one hair on her head, you'll regret it. You better pray your eyes stay gold." Bella looked on as her cousin suddenly glared at Edward and his face went from confused to shock, to offended, then amused. "Don't get cocky, you do not want me as your enemy." She whirled on her cousin. "Out of everyone, I swear Isabella Marie, what am I going to do with you?" Bella shrunk back. When they were growing up, even though they were close in age, Hermione was more like a mother to her sometimes than a sister or cousin. She knew she was in trouble, she just didn't know what for. "A bloody vampire. You're dating a damn vampire. Does Charlie know?" Bella gaped at her cousin. It took her forever to figure it out and her cousin had figured it out in seconds. "No, Charlie doesn't know, but how do you?" Hermione looked at her with her head cocked to the side. "I suppose it's probably best if you knew. Edward, how large is your coven?" He studied her for a moment. "We don't call ourselves a coven, we're more like a family. With being on an animal diet, it's allowed us to form a deepened bond with each other. There's 7 of us altogether. I'd like to meet them. I need to make sure my cousin is safe." He nodded and got out his phone and dialed Carlisle's number. After a quick phone conversation, they piled into his Volvo and were on their way to the Cullens' house. 10 minutes later, they drove down a long driveway and a large, airy house came into view. Edward was out of the car faster than they could blink and opened both of their doors. Hermione rubbed her forearm through her hoodie and felt the reassuring slimness of her wand. They walked up the steps and through the front door. There stood 6 golden-eyed vampires. "Hello, my name is Hermione." The first to step forward was a small, pixie-like vampire about Hermione's size. Hermione was quickly pulled into her embrace. "We're going to be great friends. I'm Alice." She stepped back and twined her fingers with a curly-haired, blonde vampire. "And this is my husband, Jasper." He nodded stiffly. "Ma'am." "Hello sweetie, I'm Esme, mother for all intents and purposes, and this is my husband Carlisle." Hermione was pulled into another embrace. "And this is Emmett and Rosalie." She received a big grin from the brawny one, Emmett, but Rosalie scowled at her. "Sure, let's just tell everyone our secret. It's a wonder our luck hasn't run out on this one." Rosalie sneered at Bella. Hermione felt her temper flare. She didn't know who this diva thought she was, but she wasn't going to speak to her baby cousin like that. She moved to stand in front of Bella and tensed. "Rose, I advise you to tread carefully." Carlisle looked at Hermione with an unreadable expression. Then a kind smile lit his handsome face. "Please, come in, let's sit down and talk." Hermione cautiously nodded and grabbed Bella's hand and made sure she was as far away from Rosalie as possible. Hitch didn't seem to be a problem as she avoided Bella as much as possible. Hermione pulled Bella to a love seat, closest to the exit, and smirked at the glare Edward sent her. "I guess I'll go first." She looked at Bella. "I suppose you've always been a magnet for the supernatural." "I'm a witch." Bella blinked at her then looked around the room. The faces ranged from skeptical, to worried, to amused. "Prove it," Emmett said. Hermione smirked and stood up and flicked her wrist and her wand ejected from its holster and into her waiting hand. The familiar rush of power tingled in her arm and surged through her body. She pointed her wand at Emmett and ignored the warning growl from Rosalie. "Rictusempra." Emmett fell to the ground, holding his sides as he fought the invisible hands tickling him. His loud guffaws of laughter caused the family to crack a smile. "Finite incantatum." Emmett stood up off the ground and beamed at her. She faced the window and flicked her wrist. The entire window shattered. Reparo. The glass shards clinked together as they repaired themselves. Hermione spun on the spot and appeared again, sitting next to Bella on the love seat again. Bella jumped in the air. Hen, she appeared and let out a small shriek. Sorry Bella, but do you believe me now? The vampires and Bella nodded. I've known since I was 12, and I've read loads of books on magical creatures, especially Alley after I met a vampire named Sanguini in my 6th year. Ah, yes, Sanguini, old friend of mine. Colorful character he is. Carlyle nodded and chuckled. As I remember, he was never too fond of witches and wizards. I recall him saying something about avoiding England and Scotland as a war was about to break out. Hermione felt the guilt and pain flare in her before she pushed it back behind her occlumency. Jasper shot her a worried look. Yes, well, you'd be safe to visit, the war's been over for months now. She looked down into her lap as the haunting scenes flashed in her mind. You were forced to fight, weren't you? Jasper's quiet voice caused Hermione to look up sharply and nod. There's no way. Esme looked around helplessly, her mothering instinct screaming at her to scoop up the small, curly-haired witch and never let her go. Hermione stood up and removed her jacket and rolled up her shirt. The scar from Dolohov was the most prominent, a jagged scar running from the bottom of her right breast to her left hip. There were other burns, cuts, and scars along her arms and torso. What's a mudblood? Hermione smiled sadly at Rosalie. It means dirty blood. Just like anywhere, there's prejudice in the wizarding world. Some families, pure bloods, think they're better than everyone because everyone in their family is magical, and it goes back generations. Some families can even trace their roots back to Merlin and Morgan Le Fay. Then there's half-bloods. They usually have a pure blood parent and a non-magical, or muggle-born parent. Then there's muggle-borns, like myself. A muggle is a non-magical person and a muggle-born comes from a non-magical family. We're considered an abomination, a freak of nature, and our blood is dirty. We're not worthy to learn magic. Esme couldn't hold it back any longer. She walked over and scooped Hermione into a tight hug, tight for humans anyway. I've been fighting the war since I stepped into school. That's what the war was about. Some dark wizard, similar to Hitler, got it into his head to exterminate the vermin, as he labeled it. Hermione let out a hollow laugh. The funny thing was, he was a half-blood himself. Hermione looked at the pitying faces of the vampire family. The only one who didn't look at her with pity was Jasper. War is always a hard thing to go through, been there myself. First the Civil War, then a newborn war. Hermione shivered. We learned about the newborn war in our history of magic class my 6th year. Brutal. A little while later, Bella and Edward had made their way upstairs. And Hermione found herself telling her story of the war to the remaining vampires. It was several hours later when her stomach grumbled and she cast a sheepish look at her new friends. When was the last time you ate something? It was surprisingly Rosalie who said something. Well, I was going to eat breakfast with Bella, but when I met Edward, it was kinda pushed to the back of my mind. Esme tsked. Let's put our kitchen to use. Shall we? There's some chicken in there and we'll make the girls fettuccine with chicken and garlic bread. Esme beamed and Hermione was dragged into the kitchen to watch the vampires make her and Bella a meal. When it was done, a large plate was set in front of Hermione and she was soon joined by Bella. The two girls ate quickly and quietly. After they were finished, Bella let out a large yawn. I'm going to take her home, will you be joining us? Hermione looked at her watch, it was 2 in the afternoon. No thank you, I'd like to finish my story and then I'll just apparate home. I should have plenty of time before Charlie gets home. Edward nodded and Hermione pulled Bella into a hug and then watched as they got in and sped off in his silver Volvo. The rest of the Cullens and Hermione settled back into the living room and Hermione picked up where she left off in 5th year. So like I was saying, this evil toad of a woman used blood quills as punishment. Hermione held out her hand and, I shall respect my betters was carved into her hand. They're a cursed type of quill that uses the blood of the writer instead of ink. Eventually it'll just scar. My best mate, Harry's is worse than mine. It took another 2 hours before she had finished with her moving here. You poor dear. Hermione smiled tightly at Esme. It was hard, but it was worth it. I'm just glad it's done. I still have nightmares, but I refuse to take dreamless sleep anymore as I was becoming addicted. You'll have to come over again sometime and I'll tell you about my time in the war. Jasper smiled at Hermione, and she returned it. I'd like that. She looked at her watch. Well, it's been a pleasure meeting you all, but I must run. The Cullens bid their goodbyes, and watched with wide eyes as she vanished into thin air. Well, I like her, she's got fire. Everyone turned to Rosalie with wide eyes. What? They shook their heads and dispersed into their individual activities. 3 weeks later found Hermione with Alice and Rosalie in Port Angeles picking out birthday presents for Bella. Alice and Rosalie had already picked out a dress and a necklace for her. And Hermione was having a hard time deciding. It suddenly came to her. Guys, would you care to go to London with me real fast? Wizarding London. Rose seemed doubtful and Alice nodded eagerly. I'll. So think there is something you might like. I promise, if you're with me, nothing will happen. Rosalie reluctantly agreed. All right, hold tight and whatever you do, don't let go. The two vampires know. DDED and the three turned on the spot and apparated to Diagon Alley. As soon as they landed, Hermione was crowded with people wanting autographs and camera flashing. Miss Granger, where have you been? Do you plan on passing laws for vampires next? Miss Granger. Miss Granger. Hermione let out a growl or irritation. I'll not be answering any questions today, and if you don't bugger off and leave my friends and I alone, I'll curse you. The crowd immediately dispersed, although there were another few pictures snapped. Bloody paparazzi. Hermione mumbled under her breath. You weren't joking, were you? You're a viable celebrity. Rose growled as an old wizard leered at the three of them. Right then, I have to pick up a few things while we're here besides Bella's present. They made their way to Flourish and Blots. There she picked up fantastic beasts and where to find them along with a giant, musty tome, vampires. Alice giggled and Rosalie smirked. Hermione stopped at the apotheca. Ryan stocked up on her ingredients and they made their way to Weasley's Wizard Wheezes. I'm going to warn you now, don't take anything the boys give you, especially if it's edible. Don't shake their hands, you know what. Just don't touch them at all to be on the safe side. The two sisters warily nodded and they pushed the door open. Well, George, look who decided to grace us with her presence. The famous Gryffindor princess. I must say, Your Majesty, we're honored to be basking in your glory. They finished together and grinned mischievously at her. And who might the gorgeous birds be? Fred, George, these are my new friends, Alice Hale and Rosalie Cullen. And don't even think about, first they're happily married, second, they'd tear you limb from limb if you even blinked at them wrong. The twins merely smirked at them. And these two fools are like my older brothers, Fred and George Weasley. The greatest pranksters since the Marauders. At your service, ladies. They both bowed dramatically, causing Alice to giggle and Rosalie to roll her eyes. I just wanted to stop by and send my love, we're here for a quick visit. But we've got to run. Ione stepped forward and kissed them both on the cheek. Give everyone my love and tell them I'll write soon. They waved and exited the shop. I just have 2 more stops and we can head back. The T.R.E.O. walked into Magical Menagerie and Hermione purchased a large black owl named Hades. They made it to their last stop, a sweets shop, and Hermione bought a bag of 500 blood pops. All right, we're ready to go. Hermione grabbed both of their hands and they were gone with a small pop. Hermione giggled when they appeared in the Cullens' house and Emmett let out a yelp. I have something for you all. The 7 vampires and Bella gathered around. Bella, you'll get yours later. Here, she gave each vampire a sucker. You got us suckers. Okay, you know we don't eat regular food, right? Emmett looked at her like she was dunce. Who said those were regular suckers? They're called blood pops. You get them in any sweet shop in Wizarding London. They're made with dragon blood. I thought you guys might like them, especially you, Jasper. It should help in certain situations. Jasper immediately unwrapped his sucker and popped it into his mouth. His eyes grew wide and he smiled around the treat. These are amazing. Hermione smiled at Alice. Here, there's 500 in here. It should last you a while. When you run out, let me know and I'll pick up some more. They nodded at her and thanked her. Hermione, is that an owl? Bella pointed to Hades. Yes, that's how we deliver letters. I had to make sure I picked a big, strong one because he'll be traveling long distances. The owl seemed to preen under her compliments. Hermione handed the blood pops to Carlisle. Oh Esme, you should have seen it when we got to Diagon Alley, she's famous. There were people asking for her autograph and she even had paparazzi. Hermione laughed at Alice's antics. Well, have fun, I'll see you guys later alright. She hugged everyone before she left. Hermione decided to look around for some houses as she was thinking about making her stay here permanent. She missed everyone in London terribly, but it was so much quieter here, and she was around her only living blood relatives. Hermione had looked at several houses in Forks, but none of them seemed to catch her fancy. She gave up on her house search for now and made lunch to take to Charlie at work. She pulled up next to his police cruiser and picked up the plastic bowls with his food out of the passenger seat before making her way in. Hermione weaved her way through the sparse desks and ungracefully plopped in the chair in front of Charlie's desk. Hello Uncle Charlie. He smiled at her. Hello Hermione. What brings you to the station today? Well, I've been house hunting because I think I might make this a permanent move and I've had no luck here in town. So I gave up for now and decided to bring my favorite uncle lunch. She pushed the containers forward. So anything new? Just a couple of hikers gone missing in the woods. We've got search parties out now. Charlie groaned when he opened the Tupperware. You and Belle spoil me kiddo. He greedily dug into the grilled chicken, peas, and mashed potatoes. You know, he said in between bites, you might try La Push, you know. Where Billy and Jake live. You'd probably do well to stop and talk to him about it. I will, thanks Charlie. Enjoy your lunch. She walked around the desk and kissed his cheek before making her way to her new Chevrolet Silverado. The 10-minute drive to the reservation was quiet as Hermione lost herself in her thoughts. She had a bad feeling in the pit of her stomach and a sense of foreboding. She pushed the thoughts out of her head as she pulled up to Billy's house. Jacob came bounding out of the house with a grin on his face. Well, if it isn't my second favorite girl. He swept her into a crushing hug. Hello Jacob. Is Billy home? He nodded and led her inside. Have you been hitting the gym? You look quite fit. He flashed her a quick smile. Nah, just a growth spurt. Hey Dad, our favorite Brit is here. Billy rolled around the corner and smiled at Hermione. Hello Billy. Hermione returned his smile and bent to give him a hug. Hello Hermione. What brings you to our neck of the woods? He gestured for her to have a seat on the couch. I don't have any of that fancy tea you like, but would you like a soda or anything? I'll take an orange soda if you've got it. Jacob bounded into the kitchen and returned with her beverage. Why thank you kind sir. She giggled as he bowed. Actually, Charlie sent me this way. I was looking to buy a house to make my stay permanent and nothing in Forks has caught my eye. So Charlie suggested I come see you about available houses here in La Push. Actually, I think a house on the beach just went up for sale. 2 stories, 4 bedrooms. 2.5 bath, large kitchen. It's a bit of a fixer-upper, but I think you'd really like it. I also have a number of someone who'd be able to help you, name's Sam Yulee. Jacob let out a small scoff at the name and Billy sent him a look. Anyway, if you'd like to take a look at it, we can go now. Hermione eagerly nodded and the three piled into her truck and drove to the house. As soon as she saw it, Hermione fell in love with it. It had a wrap-around porch with a swing and a spacious yard. The inside consisted of 1 bedroom on the first floor, with a large kitchen as Billy said. A living room, and a half bathroom. The second had the other 3 rooms, the master with an ensuite, a full bath, and a small study. She did a very un-Hermione-like thing and squealed. It's lovely. Oh, where do I sign? Billy and Jake laughed as she twirled in the middle of the kitchen. So Hermione, you gonna call us when you cook? Hermione laughed at Jake and nodded her head. Billy, can you get a hold of the realtor? And whoever that Sam Yulee is. I don't care what the price is, it's not an object. 5 hours later and Hermione was handed the keys to her new house. Billy and Jake had gone home and Sam was supposed to show up any minute to take a look at the house and tell her what needed to be done. She sat swinging on the front porch in a pair of ripped jeans that hung low on her hips. A black thick-strapped tank top, gray zip-up hoodie, black Pumas, and her hair loose around her shoulders. She stood up and walked off the porch when a beat-up black F-250 pulled up. If Hermione were the type, she would be drooling right now. The man that jumped out, because he sure as hell wasn't a boy, was around 6'4", obviously Native American, with thick, shaggy black hair, sculpted muscles, and a stoic look on his face. Until he looked at her face and his eyes glazed over and a goofy grin spread across his face. Sam had finally gotten his temper mostly under control and could phase almost instantly. After the elders had explained everything to him, they had worked with him and set up times for patrols. Then Paul and Jared phased and he spent most of his time with them and running patrols. He had broken up with Leah a few weeks ago and it was eating him up inside, but he couldn't take any risks and she deserved someone who had the time to devote to her. He had just gotten off patrol when Billy called and said Chief Swan's niece bought a house on the beach that needed work on and he had been recommended for the job. He quickly showered and dressed in a pair of cut-off denim shorts, navy blue shirt, and black tennis shoes before he made his way over there. When he pulled up, a wild-haired woman, about 18 or 19, was sitting on the porch swing. She jumped up and walked off the porch to meet him halfway when he pulled up. He had a greeting ready when he gazed into her dark chocolate eyes. It's like when you see her, everything changes. All of a sudden, it's not gravity holding you to the planet, it's her. Nothing else matters. You would do anything, be anything for her. A brother, a friend, a protector, a lover. Sam had to concentrate and try to remember what she had just said. Hello, my name's Hermione Granger, thank you for coming out here on such short notice. He took her offered hand and instead of shaking it, he brought it to his lips and kissed the back of it. He marveled at how small and dainty her hands were compared to his. It's no problem. Sam Yulee at your service. He sent a wide smile at her. She smiled back timidly and gently extracted her hand from his. Shall we? He couldn't believe he imprinted. It was supposed to be such a rare occurrence and he had only been phasing about a month now. She was perfect, and her accent. He could listen to her talk all day. Her voice was soft and melodic, it was almost like she caressed each syllable in her mouth. They walked into the house and she showed him all the rooms. The bedroom on the main floor, one on the second, and the half-bath all needed work, but the rest of the house was in good shape. I've never done this sort of thing before, but I'll be here oving and making arrangements, so feel free to come anytime tomorrow. Hermione gave him another timid smile. I'll be here around 10 with a few helpers if that's all right. Yeah, that sounds fantastic. I'll make you guys lunch too. I really appreciate it. Sam smiled again and she walked him outside. He took one last look at her and got in his truck and drove away. As soon as he was home, he called Paul and Jared and they arrived shortly after. So what's up, boss? Sam shook his head at Jared as him and Paul plopped on the couch. I need your help tomorrow. We've got a job. Chief Swan's niece moved into a house on the beach and the house needs some work done. Jared nodded. I've seen her around. That's a hot piece of British tale I'd like to snag and work on, if you know what I mean. Paul wiggled his eyebrows suggestively. Next thing he knew, he was up against the wall by a shaking Sam. Don't say another word about her. Jared sat gobsmacked at the table. Sam took a couple of deep breaths and his shaking stopped and he let Paul down. Sorry, he murmured, I think I imprinted on her. He sat down and put his head in his hands. Oh shit, man. Congrats. Jared slapped him on the back. Paul sat down and threw his head back as he laughed. Chief Swan is going to shoot you in the ass. Jared joined in and Sam just groaned. The next morning, Hermione had already showered and dressed. In cut-off shorts that stopped a couple inches above mid-thigh, an old red Gryffindor shirt of Harry's that she had stolen back in third year when it had grown too small for him, and red thongs on her feet. As it was an unusually warm day for mid-September, she piled her hair into a messy bun. She wished her cousin a happy birthday and gave her the 2 books before Charlie had woken up. She stopped by the electric, gas, and water companies and had them all turned on. The fridge and cupboards were now overflowing with food and she set to work making a large breakfast to thank Sam and his Fryan DS for sacrificing such a beautiful day to work on her house. They arrived promptly at 10. Sam and his 2 friends jumped out of the truck and greeted her. Hello, it's nice to meet you all. I'm Hermione Granger, and you are? Paul LaHote, ma'am. He shook her hand and gave her a flirty smile, to which Sam responded by smacking him on the back of his head. Don't mind those two, Jared Cameron. He shook her hand. Pleasure to meet you. If you don't mind, I've made breakfast for you all. Can I just say right now, I officially love you. Hermione giggled as she was suddenly swept into a hug by Jared. Right, well, this way, gents. The three wolves followed Hermione into the house and kitchen. On the table, there were large plates of eggs, sausage, French toast, bacon, and fresh orange juice. I may have went a little overboard. I'm used to cooking for a lot more people, but I love it so. Dig in. Sam, I like her, can we keep her? Hermione giggled at Paul and took a spot in between Jar, Ed and Sam and put some food on her plate. The four ate and Hermione was surprised when Sam popped the last piece of bacon in his mouth. Goodness, and here I thought Ron ate a lot. She missed the flash of hurt on Sam's face. But Jared didn't. Ron your boyfriend or something? Hermione burst into peals of laughter at the question. Oh my god, no. We've been best mates since we were 11. We tried the whole dating thing. But it was like kissing a brother. She pulled a face. It just felt wrong. Hermione stood up. Well, I'll be unpacking all day, so I'll be running from here to Charlie's to get my stuff. But just let me know if you need anything. I'll be making lunch around noon. Billy and Jacob Black will be showing up around then to eat too. The three wolves nodded. I really like this girl. Hermione sent them one last smile and she was out the door to pick up her stuff. Charlie's house was quiet and she looked around to make sure the curtains were closed before she pulled out her wand and with a flick of her wrist, her stuff flew into boxes and packed themselves. She made sure her still shrunken furniture was intact and she started the tedious process of loading all her boxes in the back of her truck. Once the bed of her truck was full, she made her way back to La Push. In the hour she had been gone, the guys had made great progress in the first room. New drywall had been put up on one wall, and the cracks in the other two had been puttied. As Hermione made her first trip in, she nearly dropped the box she was holding as she gazed at the three shirtless men in the spare bedroom. Sam was the first to notice her and she blushed bright red at being caught staring. She mumbled something unintelligible under her breath before putting the box on the kitchen floor and actively running back to her truck to finish unloading. Once all the boxes here in the house, she made sure the men were going okay and left for Charlie's again. After she had the last of her boxes, she unloaded her truck and set to making lunch. She set a skillet out and grabbed the chicken from the fridge and boiled the chicken with chicken bouillon cubes. Once the cubes had disintegrated and the chicken was cooked, she drained the water and set to cutting up the chicken. She put the shredded chicken in a pot and dumped in a large bag of extra wide egg noodles and filled the rest of the pan with water. Once the chicken and noodles started boiling, she added Italian seasoning, a little bit of garlic salt, and some pepper. She emptied a package of Hawaiian rolls onto a cookie sheet and set them in the oven to warm. There was a knock on the door and she quickly let Billy and Jake in. She leaned down and gave Billy a peck and was swept into a tight hug by Jacob. Ah, there's my girl. He grinned at her and she swatted him on the chest. Smells delicious, what did ya make? He looped his arm around her neck as she led them into the kitchen. Ah, just chicken and noodles with Hawaiian rolls. It should be just about done. She felt Jake's arm around her neck tense and she looked up at him with a questioning glance. A glare marred his usually carefree face and she looked around the kitchen to see what he was glaring at. Sam, Jared, and Paul were already sitting around the table joking around when the other three arrived. It seemed like Jake was glaring at Sam but she couldn't figure out why. Hermione didn't know why, but it felt right having them all there, her taking care of them. Hermione shrugged off Jake's arm and walked to the oven and turned it off before removing the rolls. She got the proper amount of plates and utensils down and placed them around the table, then grabbed the large pot of chicken and noodles and put it on a pot holder in the middle of the table along with the rolls. Getting out 6 Cokes, she gestured to the table, dig in. When no one moved, Hermione's smile turned into a frown. Is there something wrong? Sam shook his head. Ladies first. Hermione smiled and made herself a decent-sized plate and took 2 rolls and in a flash, the men dug in and all but Billy piled their plates with heaping amounts of food. As they tucked in, Hermione made polite conversation with all of her guests. Lunch passed quietly and Hermione was soon bidding goodbye to Jacob, who was fast becoming a great friend to her, and Billy, who she took a shine to like a second father. Jacob leaned down and pressed a kiss on her crown and gave her a lopsided grin before bounding out of the house to help his father, and then they were gone in a cloud of dust. Smiling fondly, Hermione made her way back to the kitchen to clean up the dishes from lunch, and then she needed to go to Charlie's to get her furniture. It took Hermione no time at all to do the dishes, and she drove to a secluded side road and began enlarging her furniture in the back of her truck before taking it back to her house. Sam, Paul, and Jared had taken a break and helped her unload everything, and she soon had everything at her new house. She stopped by the hardware store to pick up some paint for the living room and some household items. When she made it back to the house, she could hear arguing in her backyard. Hermione immediately put her bags on the porch and ran to see what the commotion was. When she arrived, Paul and Jared were in each other's faces, yelling, while Sam stood in between them, trying to calm everyone down. She could hear them yelling, but couldn't figure out what they were saying. As she drew closer, the words became cleared. "If you really think so, Lahote, bring it on. I don't think you're man enough to do anything." Jared emphasized his point by shoving shaking, furious Paul backwards. Hermione cautiously walked up behind Paul and placed a hand on his shoulder. This was apparently the wrong thing to do, as Paul let out a feral growl and exploded in a fury of fur and ripped clothes. Hermione let out a shriek as she was knocked backwards by a giant wolf paw connecting with her arm. She let out a hiss as she applied pressure to the bleeding wounds on her arm. She examined her arm and found she had 3 long gashes going from her shoulder to her elbow. Her head snapped up as she heard growling and snapping jaws. Jared stood off to the side as a horse-sized midnight black wolf bared its teeth at a dark silver, slightly small wolf. Hermione watched as the bigger wolf snarled and growled at the smaller one, who began whining and flattened his ears and sank to the ground. She turned her wide eyes back to Jared. "Sam, she needs to be looked at, those look kind of deep." The black wolf seemed to nod and trotted off to the bushes, and soon a very naked, very furious Sam walked out. Hermione let out an "eep" and shielded her eyes. Sam unabashedly walked over and scooped up Hermione, totally oblivious to his nakedness. In an almost involuntary move, Hermione found herself nuzzling Sam's neck and chest. She felt her magic humming in her veins and felt very drawn to Sam at that moment. You're warm." Hermione felt intoxicated by the smell of Sam and her magic going crazy. She could almost taste it in the air. If Hermione would have been in her right state of mind, she would be panicking right about then. She felt out of control of her body as the tip of her tongue darted out and tasted his neck. She felt an overwhelming need to wrap herself around this man and never let go. She was startled out of her thoughts at that, and the pain in her arm made her wince. "Damn it, I'll call Dr. Cullen to come take a look at it." Hermione nodded at Sam as she felt herself getting dizzy and lightheaded. The last thing she remembered was Sam's worried face as he carried her inside. "I've stitched her up and gave her a transfusion. She'll be out for a while, but she's okay." Carlisle finished washing his hands. "I thank you, doctor." Carlisle gave Sam a gentle smile and shook his offered hand. "It's no problem." Carlisle didn't say anything about already knowing Hermione, because he wasn't sure how much they had told each other, just that she was too close when Paul phased and she might not even remember it all correctly. Sam called Billy to let him know and went home to change and go on patrol. He stepped outside and jogged into the woods before taking off his shorts and tying them to his leg and phasing. "Anything new?" "Nothin', boss man." Jared hesitated for a second. "Paul feels like shit. Is she okay?" Sam let out an involuntary growl. "She's out right now, but she'll be fine." "Good to hear. I really do like her. I think when the pack gets bigger, she'll be a good alpha female." Sam let out an agreeing howl. "Get home and get something to eat and get some sleep. I'll see you later." Jared gave a sharp bark and all was silent as Sam galloped around the woods and secured the perimeter. The next morning, Sam stopped by Hermione's house to find out she was still asleep and Billy and Jake had stayed the night to watch over her. He had told Billy and the other 2 elders how he had imprinted, and they agreed to check in on her while he did patrols and drills for the day. Sam had worked for a couple of hours at Hermione's before he met up with Jared and Paul. Paul looked wary as he walked into Sam's apartment but let out a sigh of relief when the three sat down to eat pizza and discuss patrols. Around 8 that night, his phone rang. And he jumped up to answer it thinking it was Billy or Harry letting him know Hermione was awake. "Hello, Sam." It was Billy but he sounded worried. "Bella Swan has gone missing and the Cullens have left town. Chief Swan is putting together a search party. Can you and the boys look in the woods? He said he hasn't seen her since she left for school this morning." "Yeah, we'll head out right now. How's Hermione?" Billy sighed wistfully. "She's doing fine. She woke up for a few minutes earlier, but Sue is with her now. Me, Harry, and Jake are about to head to Charlie's house now." "All right." Sam hung up and looked at Jared and Paul. "Let's get going. Paul, you take the northern boundary, Jared the southern boundary, and I'll check the woods around the chief's house," Sam said as they walked out to the surrounding wooded area. They stripped down and tied their shorts to their ankles before taking off. Hermione woke with a killer headache and a parched throat. She gingerly sat up and cried out as she put pressure on her injured arm. She cursed under her breath because she couldn't even heal it because Sam had seen the wound. Speaking of Sam, what the hell happened earlier? Was that a bear or a humongous-sized wolf? Swinging her feet over the side of her bed, she made her way downstairs cautiously as she heard someone moving around in her kitchen. She peeked around the corner to see 2 women. One looked to be the other's mother, cooking food in her kitchen. Hermione stepped around the corner and cleared her throat. "Oh good, you're up. My name's Sue Clearwater and this is my daughter Leah. Sam was worried about you so he called Billy, but he had to leave so we came over." Hermione nodded awkwardly. Yeah, thanks." A phone started ringing and Sue extracted it from her pocket and answered. "Hello." There was a pause. "Yeah, Billy called Sam and they're in the woods looking for her now." Another pause. "Yeah, about half an hour ago." Sue shook her head. "Yeah, the Cullens are gone also. Let me know if you need anything, Hermione's awake now." "Yeah, I'll let her know. Bye." Sue hung up and looked at Hermione. Bella's gone missing and that was all she got out before Hermione was in her room haphazardly throwing on a pair of jeans, a shirt, a pullover hoodie, and her shoes. "Thank you Sue. Leah, feel free to stay as long as you want. I need to go see Charlie." Hermione didn't wait for a reply before she was out the door and on her way to her uncle's house. When she pulled up, there was a group of people situated around Charlie's police cruiser with maps and walkie-talkies. Hermione pushed through the throng of people until she got to Charlie, Harry, Billy, and Jake. Charlie let out an "OOMF" as Hermione launched herself into his arms. "I'm going to help you Charlie. Tell me how I can help." She pulled back to see her worried uncle. "You're not going anywhere. We've got people looking. I need you here where I know you're safe." "No, I can't stand around doing nothing. If that bastard hurt my baby cousin, I'll rip him limb from limb." "Don't worry, we'll find her." Harry tried to calm the young woman down, but Jacob ended up having to hold her in a hug lest she run off and they have 2 missing girls. Hermione put up a hell of a fight as she struggled in Jacob's surprisingly strong grip as she cursed Edward to hell and back. "Jacob Black, you let me go this instant. I swear all." "Charlie, look." Hermione stopped her struggling to see Sam walking out of the woods in just a pair of cut-off denim shorts and shoes carrying an unconscious Bella in his arms. Charlie ran over and Sam transferred Bella to his arms. "She's all right. I got her, thank you Sam." Sam nodded and made sure Charlie had a grip on her and looked at her and Jacob with an unreadable expression. She finally freed herself from Jacob's embrace and ran to her cousin. "Bella, Bella, oh my God, Bella." Charlie took her in the house and everyone began dispersing. One took one last look at Sam and sent him a grateful smile before rushing into the house after her uncle and cousin. By the time Hermione got home, Sue and Leah were gone and her kitchen was cleaned up. Bella had been checked over and she was okay for the most part, so Charlie shooed her home. Hermione pulled up to her house and sat in her truck and cried. She had been so worried and frightened. So many scenarios ran through her mind, all usually with Bella ending up dead. From vampire attacks to rogue Death Eaters, and Hermione's nerves were frayed. She eventually stumbled into the house and curled up on her bed, falling into a fitful sleep. Hermione watched as Harry and Ron were dragged away to the dungeon and Bellatrix turned her beady gaze on Hermione. Promises of pain and torture alight in the dark woman's eyes. Hermione squared her shoulders. She was unprepared for the pain of the curse though and dropped to the floor, shrieking in pain. Her muscles convulsed as the curse ripped through her body. She didn't know how many times she was cursed, but she would rather lose her mind than betray her friends, so repeated her mantra. It's a fake. We didn't steal anything. I swear it's fake. We only found it. Lies. You filthy mudblood. Bellatrix fisted a hand in her hair and yanked her forward before backhanding her. Bring out the goblin. Griphook was brought out and for some reason went along with the lies and told Bellatrix it was a fake. Bellatrix shrieked in rage and crucioed Hermione again. Tears leaked from her eyes as her vision wavered and she felt herself letting go. A sharp pain in her arm brought everything back to focus and she tried screaming in pain, but her voice was hoarse and her throat raw. Hermione was suddenly jolted awake and she scrambled backwards fro the intruder and fell off the bed with a thump. Her vision was blurred by her tears and she screamed. Scuttling back to a corner, Hermione balled herself up and let out gut-wrenching sobs. Hey, you're all right. Come on, you're safe. Hermione cautiously looked into the cerulean blue eyes of Sam and launched herself at him, clinging to him as she sobbed. She took comfort in his warm bod, and soothing hands that rubbed circles on her back. He made quiet, shushing noises as her sobs died down and turned to soft, hitching breaths. She slowly extracted herself and mumbled an apology. Thank you for that. I need to take a shower, but then I'll make some breakfast. Are the boys here? Sam studied her for a moment, and decided she was okay. Yeah, they're already working. Hermione nodded and stood up. Sam stood up as well and couldn't help the cheeky grin that stole across his face. Hermione raised an inquisitive eyebrow. Nice shirt. Hermione frowned and looked down. It was a large gray shirt with a black wolf on it. I don't know where I got it. It was in with my laundry, but I don't ever remember Harry or Ron having a shirt like this. Plus, it's far too big to be either of theirs. She pulled out the bottom of the shirt and looked it over. It's actually mine. I must have left it here the other day and when Sue cleaned up, she probably thought it was yours. Sam laughed as Hermione's face turned beet red. Oh, well, I'll have it washed and back to you by the end of the day. Don't worry about it, it looks better on you than it does on me. Hermione gave him a small smile before she gathered up fresh clothes. I'll be out in a few then. She quickly darted around him and into the bathroom. Sam laughed at his imprint's embarrassment and walked downstairs to see Paul and Jared working silently on finishing the room. He joined them and they worked diligently for half an hour and were drawn out to the kitchen to see Hermione in a light blue summer dress with no shoes on and her hair plaited to the side. I hope you boys are hungry. I've made a couple of breakfast pizzas. Jared laughed and walked over to Hermione, giving her a big kiss on the cheek. You are a goddess. I bow at your feet, fair lady. Hermione giggled and swatted him in the chest. Oh, you. Go wash up, the lot of you. It'll be ready by the time you're done. I'm going to see Bella in a little bit, so you'll have to fend for yourselves for lunch. The three Quileutes moved to the bathroom and washed their hands and found spots around the table. Hermione placed 3 breakfast pizzas on the table and took a spot next to Paul and Jared and placed a slice of pizza on her plate. As soon as Hermione had hers, the boys dug in. Hermione found herself looking around the table and loving the feeling of being around this particular group. She felt like this is where she was supposed to be and that everything was right. Breakfast passed quickly and Hermione did a spot of unpacking and soon bid Sam and his friends goodbye and made her way to Forks. Charlie was sitting on the porch when she pulled up and gave her a sad smile. How's she doing? Charlie let out a small sigh. She had nightmares last night. She told me that her and Edward took a walk in the woods and he told her that his family was leaving and left her there. He left my baby in the woods by herself. If I ever see him, I'll shoot him right in his ass. Get in line, Hermione said darkly. I'm going to go talk to her. Charlie nodded and Hermione headed into the house. The door creaked when she opened it, but Bella just laid on her bed, staring at the ceiling with glassy eyes. Laying down gingerly next to her cousin, Hermione reached out and twined their fingers together. The two girls laid like that for hours, not saying word. Hermione eventually got up, kissed Bella on her head and promised to visit again soon and said her goodbyes to Charlie and drove home. Her house was once again silent and dark when she walked in. She walked through the house and shut all blinds, which didn't matter. Her house was in a secluded spot on the beach with most of it surrounded by forest, and walked upstairs to change. She found the discarded shirt that turned out to be Sam's and stripped out of her dress. The shirt fell to mid-thigh and hung loosely on her small frame. Hermione wasn't scrawny but she wasn't overweight either. After the war, she easily gained the weight back after staying with Molly and Arthur and had her curvy figure back, but she was swimming in his shirt. She let out a giddy giggle and immediately slapped her hands over her mouth. She liked Sam, and she was acting like Lavender Brown. Hermione made a face at that and went downstairs to make something to eat. She tied the excess material of the shirt in a rubber band so the hemline was now around her waist instead of thighs and changed into a pair of black satin boy-cut underwear. She slipped on a pair of black and white plaid PPER boots and with the earbuds of her iPod firmly in place she turned on shuffle and danced to the beat of the song. It's going down, I'm yellin', timber. You better move, you better dance. Let's make a night, you won't remember. I'll be the one you won't forget. It's going down, I'm yellin', timber. You better move, you better dance. Let's make a night, you won't remember. I'll be the one you won't forget. Hermione danced to the beat as she pulled out a can of tomato soup and dumped the contents into a small pot and turned on the burner. After she buttered the bread, she got out a skillet to start a grilled cheese. As she waited to flip, she grabbed the spatula and began singing into it while she swung her hips and bum to the upbeat song. She bopped along to the songs playing as she ate her food. After the dishes were done, she decided to finish unpacking her living room as she was feeling suddenly energized. It was only 6 in the evening so she wanted to get some work done. It's a cold and crazy world. That's ragin' outside. Oh baby, me and all my girls are bringin' on a fight. Gotta show a little leg, gotta shimmy your chest. It's a life, it's style, it's a need. It's burlesque. Hermione rolled her body to the beat and let the stress of the past few days melt away as she lost herself in the music. Love, sex, ladies no regrets. Love, sex, ladies no regrets. Been holdin' back for quit samati iime. And finally the moments re-I-ite. I love to make the people stare. They know I got that certain savoir faire. Fasten up, can you imagine what would happen if I let you close enough to touch? Step into the fantasy, you never wanna leave baby, that's guaranteed. Why? Hermione was so engrossed in her dancing and singing, she didn't notice the 3 imposing figures standing in the doorway with their mouths agape. Hermione swung her hair around and gyrated her hips while singing the song. She went to swing her hair again and lost her balance, causing her to fall backwards over the couch. Hermione laid on the floor laughing at herself until 3 faces popped into view. She squeaked and tore her earbuds out. I thought you left. Hermione hastily stood up and faced Sam, Jared, and Paul. We just went to grab dinner. We didn't know what time you were going to get back, so we were going to start on the upstairs. Sam couldn't help it when his eyes flickered down to bare legs. Hermione looked down also and felt her face heat up. She squeaked and ran upstairs to put on some pants. When Hermione was out of earshot, Paul swore. You're damn lucky you imprinted on her. Or I'd have already taken her for a ride. Did you see that ass? Sam let out warning growl, but he silently agreed. She did indeed have a nice backside. And legs. And chest. She was just perfect as far as he was concerned. She wasn't stick skinny like most girls around here and actually looked healthy with her hourglass figure and womanly curves. She came down a few minutes later with her hair pulled up and a pair of oversized sweatpants. She wouldn't look any of them in the eye when she came down. Suddenly, her head snapped up. I never got to talk to you about the other day. What the hell happened? The guys shared a silent look before Sam spoke up. You were attacked by a wild wolf. Paul and Jared scared it off and Dr. Cullen came and treated you. Hermione absently nodded her head. She believed him. He had no reason to lie to her, but she felt like he wasn't telling her the whole truth. So miss wanna act shy, wanna tell us where you learned those moves from? Jared wriggled his eyebrows at her. Hermione rolled her eyes and sat down on her couch with her legs folded under her. My mum made me take dance every summer, especially when I was home from boarding school. Jazz, hip-hop, ballet, you name it. I've probably done it. Hermione pushed the thought of her mother to the back of her mind. You went to boarding school. Sam wanted to know as much about her as he could, and this was a perfect way to start. Yes, from the time I was 12 until a few months ago. It was in a secluded spot in Scotland. What was it like? The group laughed at the enthralled expression on Jared's face. It was magical. Hermione had to laugh at her pun. There was a little village nearby, but other than that, all you could see were the forest, the castle, and the lake. She cursed her small slip up the moment it came out. You went to school in a castle. Wicked. It was very large, and cold. If you think it's cold and wet here, you should visit Scotland. I wore layers too. Bed every night because the castle was old and made of stone and heated by fireplaces. Sounds like a lot of fun. Not. Hermione leaned over and lightly swatted Paul on his arm. So what were you like in school? A small laugh escaped at Sam's question. My chemistry teacher once called me a know-it-all. I was top of my year, and I suppose if you were to ask my mates, they'd say I was a bit of a homework Nazi. She smiled sheepishly. Several hours later, Hermione was finally snuggled beneath her duvet and on her way to sleep. The next couple of weeks went by in a flurry as Hermione and the three grew closer and Bella sank deeper into her depression, pushing everyone away. Bella and Hermione hadn't spoken in a couple of days since they had gotten into a big row about Edward. A sunny Saturday found Hermione sitting on a beach blanket while the guys horsed around, playing a combined game of football and soccer. Hermione was engrossed in her book when she heard a woman yelling. She looked up and saw some bleach blonde with a finger in Paul's face, yelling at him. Sam and Jared were trying to diffuse the tension when the girl hauled off and slapped first Paul, then Sam. Hermione saw red. White-hot fury rushed through her body and she felt a possessive urge to put the girl in her place. Standing abruptly, Hermione marched over to the girl in the too small clothes and too much makeup. Jared was desperately trying to calm his furious friends when Hermione arrived. Who the hell do you think you are? The blonde turned to Hermione. She opened her mouth to say something but Hermione cut her off. No, I'm talking and you're going to listen. You're going to apologize to Sam and Paul, then you're going to walk away and never speak to Paul again. Am I clear? The blonde arched a brow at Hermione and looked her up and down. And I suppose you're going to make me. She flipped her hair in Hermione's face and in a blur, Hermione cocked back and let her fist fly forward into the girl's nose. She then wrapped the girl's hair around her fist and pulled, causing the girl fall to her knees. I'm not playing with you, little girl. I'm sorry. I promise, you won't see me again. Hermione released the girl and she fell onto her stomach in the sand. She scrambled up and away. Hermione turned her fury onto the cause of this problem. Paul Andrew Lahote. You have got to leave those slags alone. They are no good for you. One of these days, one of them are going to end up pregnant or you'll contract some kind of disease. Then what are you going to do, Lahote? She smacked him on the side of his head. You need to start using your head on your shoulders, not in your trousers. Hermione huffed and turned to Sam. He was preparing himself for a lecture but her expression softened. Are you okay? Or do I need to do some trollop hunting? Sam let out a loud bark of laughter and slung his arm around her neck. You're a little spitfire, aren't you? Hermione went up on her tiptoes and examined his face where the girl hit him. So what's the prognosis, Doc? Am I gonna live? Sam grinned cheekily at Hermione. You know, Hermione, I'm glad you're on our team. Hermione stuck her tongue out at Jared. No one messes with my boys while I'm around. She looped an arm around Sam's waist, who still had his arm around her neck, and Jared's waist. Come on, it's lunchtime. I gotta to say, you're like a little lioness with a mean right hook. Hermione burst into peals of laughter at Paul's statement. You have no idea. Come on, I'm hungry. All right, slugger, let's go. Sam stopped and stooped down and Hermione jumped on his back. She was still amazed at how strong they all were, and they laughed at her when she freaked out about how warm they were and tried to make them go to the hospital. They ate a quick dinner of open-faced roast beef sandwiches with mashed potatoes and retired to the living room to watch movies. With a sigh of content, Hermione leaned her head against her head against Sam's shoulder and laid her feet in Paul's lap. "Come on, Hermione, get those things out of here." Paul playfully plugged his nose and waved a hand at her feet. Hermione jabbed a toe into his stomach. "Watch it, Lahote, I'll not cook for you anymore if you keep up." With a cheeky grin at his face of horror, Hermione settled herself in to watch We Are the Titans. About halfway through the movie, Jared and Paul left Hermione and Sam by themselves. By the end of the second movie, Sam had somehow ended up laying on the couch with Hermione snoozing on top of him, and he was in heaven. He inhaled deeply and let himself drown in her warm chocolate, strawberry, and cinnamon smell. Soon, his eyelids were drooping and he slipped off to sleep. Hermione woke feeling very warm and safe. She snuggled into her bed and stopped. Her bed grew muscles, and smelled an awful lot like Sam. She cracked an eye and realized she was definitely sleeping on Sam. And she couldn't find it in her to get off, so she closed her eyes, snuggled back in for a little more sleep. Around 30 minutes later, Paul and Jared walked in. Jared elbowed Paul in the ribs. "You owe me 5. Paul rolled his eyes and pulled a 5 out of his pants and slapped it into Jared's waiting hand. "Honey, I'm home." Hermione jumped and rolled off of Sam and onto the floor. Sam sat up on his elbows and glared at the pair of them before helping Hermione back up. She tried to sit on another couch, but he pulled her back into the position they were in. "Go away, kitchen's closed today." Jared sniggered at his alpha while Paul smirked. They wandered into Hermione's kitchen anyway and scavenged through her food. Hermione buried her face in Sam's chest and giggled. "Hermione." His broad chest rumbled when he spoke. "I like you." Hermione looked up at him, puzzled. "I like you too, Sam." A small sigh escaped his lips. "No, I mean I really like you." Hermione froze. She swore her hearing was going out. "Come again. I'd like to take you out to dinner or something. Would you be up to it?" Hermione blinked owlishly at him and he began to fidget, becoming more unsure of himself. "Hermione." Her face split into a wide grin and she nodded. "I'd love to, Sam. It's about time." "Shut your mouth, Jared, or you'll find yourself booted out of my kitchen." "Yes, dearest." Shaking her head, Hermione sat up and stretched and Sam followed. "So about 7 sound okay?" "Sounds perfect." "Okay, well, I have some errands I have to run. I'll see you tonight." Hermione nodded and leaned up to kiss him on the cheek. Hermione practically skipped to the kitchen after Sam left. Sam and Hermione sitting in a tray. Hermione glared at Jared, but it didn't last. "You're a bloody menace sometimes, Cameron, you know that." She sat down next to Jared and stole a piece of his pizza. She eventually went upstairs to shower and changed into a white summer dress. She sat back around the kitchen table talking with Jared and Paul for about an hour when there was a howl. Hermione got up and looked out the sliding glass door to see into the forest. She heard a galloping sound and walked out onto the porch to investigate. Wind was knocked out of her as she hit the ground. Hermione. A red-headed vampire was standing over her, grinning. Horror dawned on her face as Jared and Paul came racing out of the house. She was about to tell them to run when in mid-jump, their clothes-shredded giant horse-sized wolves took their place. The female vampire grinned at her and in a flash, she was gone with the 2 wolves hot on her heels. Hermione gaped after them and jumped with the bushed rustled and third, bigger midnight black wolf trotted out. He whimpered at her and with one last gaze, he galloped off after the other 2 and the vampire. Once Hermione was over her shock, she wandered inside and got out the ingredients for spaghetti and garlic bread with chocolate cupcakes for dessert. She had just sat down to eat a while when she heard a rustling in her doorway and was met with 3 guilty faces. "Sit down and eat, and then we'll talk." The 3 eagerly nodded and piled food onto their plates. The silence was strained on the part of the wolves. But Hermione calmly ate her food and debated on whether or not to tell them about her being a witch. When they finished, they adjourned into the living room and Hermione had decided to be honest with them. She felt safe and protected with them and she wanted everything out there. So, Hermione looked at them expectantly. In an unspoken agreement, Sam would be the one to explain. "I'm not sure where to start." He took a moment to gather his thoughts. I can tell you the basics, but I think it'd be good for you to come to a meeting with the elders. Hermione nodded and he continued. We're werewolves. Hermione snorted and shook her head. Sam was confused. Was she in denial? She seemed to read his mind, however, and explained. Your shapeshifters are. Eel werewolves can only turn on a full moon and look completely different. They have no control over their actions unless they take a special potion. Sam was confused now. Show me yours and I'll show you mine. Well, okay. We're shapeshifters then. Our sole reason for existing is to protect our tribe and the surrounding area from vampires. He took a deep breath. You were attacked by a vampire. The wolves waited with bated breath for Hermione to dissolve into hysterics, but she sat there waiting for them to finish. You're not freaking out. That's not the first run-in with vampires I've had. Though, it's been a while since I've had to fight one. Sam let out an involuntary growl at his mate fighting vampires. I suppose it's my turn. Okay. If shapeshifters, vampires, and werewolves are real, what else is reality and not fairy tales? I've seen unicorns, I've ridden on the back of a dragon, I've seen mermaids, all sorts of magical creatures. The three gaped at her. I've also seen witches and wizards. Oh, are they all green and covered in warts? Do they ride brooms and stir cauldrons? If the situation wasn't so serious, Hermione would have laughed at Jared. Instead she glared at him. Do I look like I'm green? And I've never had a wart in my entire life. Thank you very much, I'm offended. Hermione crossed her arms and stuck her nose in the air haughtily. You're a witch. It was almost comical as the three shouted at Hermione with looks of wonder on their faces. Found out when I was 12. Your fancy boarding school. Hermione turned to Sam. Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Hermione nodded. Can you show us any magic? Hermione nodded and reached under her dress and took her wand from her holster. What would you like to see? Jared lit up like a child in a candy shop while Paul and Sam watched with amused expressions. Can you fly? Hermione pulled a face. I'd rather keep my feet on the ground, thanks. The three chuckled at Hermione. Okay. Just show me something then. Hermione flicked her wand. Avis. A small flock of birds appeared and flew around the room. Finite incantatem, rictusempra. Hermione pointed her wand at Paul, who erupted into a laughing fit as invisible hands tickled him. She waved her wand again and he glared at her while he regained his breath. Accio cup. A cup from Hermione's coupard flew into her hand. Augmenti. Water spouted from the end of her wand and filled the cup. When it was finished, she held it out to Sam. Sam took the cup from her and took a small sip. His gaze lit up and he finished the rest. That is the best water I've ever had. Quote. Hermione giggled. That's because it's water in its purest form. It's been untouched by anything other than that cup. She stood up. Now, time for the grand finale. She spun on the spot and dissipated with a small pop. Sam jumped up and frantically looked around for her. Where'd she go? With another small pop, she appeared right in front of him and pecked him on his cheek. That's a form of how we travel. Everyone except Hermione jumped when Hades flew into the room and landed on her shoulder, extending his leg. Hermione took the letter and walked into the kitchen to get him an owl treat. When she walked back into the living room, she stopped at the bewildered expressions on their faces. Owls, how we get out post. So what's it like being a witch? Hermione sat down and the rest joined her. She thought about how to word her answer to Sam's question carefully. For the most part it was. She was cut off as Jared burst out laughing. What? He held out his finger as he caught his breath. I just got what you said the other day. About going to school in a castle. It was magical. The rest laughed with him. Yes, well anyway, being a witch, for the most part was amazing. Quote. But, Sam urged her on. She fidgeted uncomfortably. There's always racism and prejudice wherever you go. I'm what you call muggle-born. A muggle is someone who is non-magic and no one in my family is magical. Then there are half-bloods who have partially magical families, and then pure-bloods who have all magical families. I was ostracized because of my blood status. She waved her hand and the glamour on her arm disappeared. I was taken hostage during the war and tortured. A mad woman carved this into my arm with a cursed knife. The word mudblood stood out on her slightly tanned arm. Sam let out a growl and stood up to pace the room, trying to tamper down his temper. You were involved in a war. Hermione stood up and squared her shoulders. It's over now. Has been for a few months. But yes, right on the front lines. Hermione walked into the kitchen to make some tea while Sam calmed himself down. 10 minutes later, she walked back in with a tea tray levitating behind her. She sat down and poured 4 cups. I'm not having a tea party with you, Hermione. Paul deadpanned. Shut up, Lahote. It's chamomile and it's calming. You boys need some calm in your life. Now, if you drink this, I'll tell you about the war, though I must tell you, it's not pretty, though war never is. The 3 obediently drank their tea, which even under the threat of torture, would they never admit they liked it. So Hermione spent the next few hours telling her story once again and answering her questions. I still can't believe you did all that. You're tiny. Just because you're all giants. I mean, come on, you're all at least 6 feet 3 if not taller. I may only be 5 feet 5, but I pack a hell of a punch. Would you like to find out what your little trollop did, Paul? Paul sniggered. You'd break your hand, princess. She twirled her wand in her hand. I don't need my hands, Lahote, she said darkly. Sam cracked a small smile, but he was torn up inside, having to what his imprint went through made his inner wolf howl in despair. So where do we go from here? Hermione looked at Jared at his question. Does being a wolf change who you guys have been since I met you? They shook their head. And I'm still the same person, just with a few tricks up my sleeve. The 3 let out relieved breaths. And you 3 need to skedaddle. I have a few things to do and a date to prepare for tonight. Hermione sent a wink at Sam. She kissed them all on their cheeks and pushed them out of her door with a laugh. Hermione drove to Forks to see if she could patch things up with her cousin. When she got there, Charlie was asleep on the couch. She sneaked past him and up the stairs where Bella was sitting in a chair staring out the window. Bella. The girl in question ignored Hermione. Bella, please speak to me. Bella continued to stare absent-mindedly out the window. Hermione sighed and kissed her on the forehead before she left again. She arrived home a few minutes later and started a few letters to her friends. She hadn't wrote them in a while and she didn't want them to worry. After she finished, she sent Hades on his way and walked to the fireplace. Shish. E grabbed a pinch of flow powder and called out her destination before she stuck her head in. Ginny Weasley, get your ass out here, I need your help. All right, Hermione, don't get your knickers in a twist, step back. I'm coming through. Hermione stood up and walked to her couch. A few seconds later, Ginny stepped through the flow. Ginny dusted herself off and placed her hands on her hips. Now, what is this emergency? Hermione grinned and hugged her friend. I have a date tonight. Ginny squealed. Tell me all about him. Is her gorgeous? Is he nice? What's his name? How'd you guys meet? Hermione pulled her friend down with her onto the couch and sighed happily. His name's Sam and he is beyond gorgeous. Ginny, you know me, I've never been one to drool over guys, but this one, God. Ginny giggled. I must meet him. He must have the Ginny stamp of approval before you leave tonight. Now, we need to go shopping. Hermione sighed and stood up to put her shoes on and grabbed her bag. Let's check this little town you've decided to live in first and go from there. Hermione nodded and they loaded into her truck and left to go first to La Push, then Forks. I mean, honestly, who names a town after an utensil? Forks indeed. Hermione and Ginny were walking around La Push trying to find Hermione something to wear when Hermione rolled her eyes and groaned. Ginny shot a questioning look at her friend. I have a silly bint who needs put in her place. Excuse me a minute, will you, Gin? Ginny watched in amusement as Hermione walked across the street. Hermione marched across the street and smacked Paul on the back of the head. The brunette who was yelling at Paul stopped and eyed her warily. All right, Lahote, I'm tired of bailing you out. I thought we had this chat already. Hermione raised her eyebrow at Paul, who looked decently chastised. Who are you, his girlfriend or something? The girl sneered at Hermione, who just laughed. Honey, Paul wishes. No, I'm Jew. Saint the one who has to bail him out when he decides to have a bit of fun and a girl can't take a hint and leave him alone. Hermione shot the girl a pointed look. When you're done being stupid, Paul, you know who to call for a good time. She batted her fake lashes at him, shot Hermione one last sneer, and walked away. Hermione cut Paul off. Not one word, Paul. Now, as your punishment, you can help Ginny and I pick out something for me to wear tonight for my date with Sam. Paul groaned but followed Hermione anyway. They walked up to a grinning redhead. I hope this isn't Sam I'd hate to kick his ass in the middle of the street. With a raised eyebrow, Ginny looked from Paul to Hermione. Ginny, this is Paul. Paul, this is my best female friend, Ginny. She turned to Ginny. No, this is one of Sam's good friends though. He's going to help us shop today. Do I at least get to eat your delicious food when we're done? Hermione pretended to think about it before she nodded. So, did she go to school with you? Hermione caught on quickly. Yes, this is the Ginny from my stories. Ginny shot Hermione a look. He knows Gin, but it's fine, he'll keep it a secret. Gin. Why nodded and they made their way into the next clothing boutique. Ginny picked out several outfits for Hermione to try on and model for them. They finally decided on a simple, knee-length black dress, with off-the-shoulder straps and a plunging back that left her back bare until just above her bum with black peep-toe stilettos. Once they were back at Hermione's house, Hermione made some food for P. Owl before Ginny dragged her upstairs to get her ready. Sam finished his patrol and traded off with Jared before going to look for Paul. He checked all the usual spots and figured he'd found a new plaything when he couldn't find him. Showered and dressed in a pair of his nicest jeans and a black button-down shirt, Sam checked the time, and decided it was okay to head over to Hermione's. He pulled up and knocked on the door. A bubbly redhead answered the door and looked him up and down. With a blank face, he stared right back at her before she smirked. I like you. Come in, she's just finishing getting ready. He followed the redhead into the kitchen where Paul was seated munching on extra-large muffins. He scowled at Paul as he sat across from him. Paul grinned. Janine caught me on E Street today and Princess had to rescue me again. Sam shook his head before he turned to the redhead and stuck his hand out. Hi, I'm Sam Yulee. Ginny took his hand and almost jumped at the temperature of it. Ginny Weasley. Ginny sat down in between the boys and they chatted about this and that while they waited for Hermione. Hermione stood in the kitchen doorway nervously smoothing down her dress and trying to appear confident in clothes she would never normally wear. The dress hugged her curves perfectly and the heels made her legs look slim and long. She had Ginny keep her makeup light with just some kohl eyeliner, mascara, and nude lip gloss. Her hair had been tamed into silky curls that she pinned to one side and let cascade over one shoulder. Ginny spied her friend. She shot a knowing look at Sam. Paul turned to face Hermione and let out a low whistle and Hermione felt her cheeks heat as she blushed. Sam was the last to turn around and when he was her, his jaw dropped before his face split into a wide grin. He quickly got up and made his way across the room. His cerulean eyes roamed down her figure and back up to her chocolate eyes. You look breathtaking. Hermione smiled shyly at him. You don't look too bad yourself, Mr. Yulee. She looked at her friends sitting at the table grinning at them. Thank you, Ginny. I owe you one. And Paul, don't eat all my food, I just went to the store yesterday. I'll see you guys later. The two waved and Sam placed Hermione's arm in his and made their way outside. I want details, Hermione. Laughing at her friend, Hermione let Sam lead her outside and help her into his truck. While driving down the road, Sam picked up Hermione's hand and placed a small kiss on her knuckles. I hope you like where we're going. A hint of uncertainty shone on his face and Hermione found it endearing. I'm sure it'll be lovely. Conversation flowed easily and the silences were anything but awkward. After around 45 minutes, they pulled up on a busy street in Port Angeles. Sam helped Hermione out of the truck and led her down the block and into an alley. Sam Yulee, you're not trying to get fresh, are you? Hermione playfully slapped his arm. When he wriggled his eyebrows suggestively. No, Miss Granger, but here we are. They rounded a corner and a small Italian restaurant sat tucked in the corner of the dingy alley. I stumbled across this place by accident one night. I think you'll enjoy it. Hermione beamed at him and they entered the little place. The inside was lit by only candles and had a little over a dozen intimate tables scattered around the room. Fresh flowers adorned every table and gave the room a fresh floral scent mixed with delicious smelling food. It's wonderful, Sam. The host escorted them to their table and Sam pulled out Hermione's chair for her before seating himself. Hermione ordered the manicotti while Sam ordered the lasagna. By the time they left, Hermione's cheeks hurt from all the smiling and laughing she did at dinner. They decided to take a small walk around the block before they made the drive home. When they arrived at Hermione's, Sam raced around the truck and helped her out of the vehicle. As he didn't drop her hand, Hermione laced their fingers together as he walked her to the door. On the porch, Hermione turned to face him. "I had a wonderful time tonight, Sam, thank you." A grin stole across his face that Sam couldn't contain. "Me too." He rubbed a hand on the back of his neck. "I'd like for you to come to a bonfire this weekend. I have something else to tell you and I think you really enjoy hearing the legends of our people." Confusion overtook Hermione's face and she nodded. "It's nothing bad, is it?" He shook his head. "Okay, I'll be really busy these next few days so I won't see you till this weekend." Disappointment settled in Hermione's stomach and she looked to the ground, but she nodded anyway. "Hermione." He placed 2 fingers on the underside of her chin and forced her to look at him. Her lips parted to say something, but he leaned in and gently brushed his lips over hers. Goosebumps broke out over her skin at the contact and Sam lightly ran the back of his knuckles over her cheek. "I'll see you this weekend," he whispered and walked to his truck and drove away. Grinning like a mad woman, Hermione skipped into her house and up the stairs to flop on her bed and stare at the ceiling. Still grinning. After a few minutes, she forced herself to get up and she let her hair down and changed into her new favorite shirt, the one Sam left, and a pair of Wong-N's boxer shorts with little rainbows on them. She happily hummed until she heard her flow activate downstairs. Wand in hand, she cautiously made her ways downstairs and peeked around the corner. She let out a small laugh and went to hug her visitors. Draco, Harry, Ron, and Ginny all stood in her living room, looking around. Draco was the first to spot her and scooped her up in a bone-crushing hug. Hermione grinned as she was passed from person to person. When she got to Ginny, the redhead smirked at her. "How did it go?" Hermione grasped Ginny's hand and pulled her to the couch to sit down. A dreamy look settled on her face. "Oh, Ginny, it was wonderful. He's such a gentleman and I just feel so happy and content when I'm with him." Ginny giggled and the two were brought out of their talk by a throat clearing. "All right, who is this bloke who thinks he's good enough for our Hermione?" Hermione rolled her eyes at Harry. "Don't roll your eyes, pet, he's not the only one wondering." Hermione turned at Draco's drawl. "Yeah, what they said." The boys sat down around the living room. "How long are you guys staying?" Hermione tried to steer the conversation away from her new beau. "However long you'll have us. We need a break and Molly's driving us nut with the wedding planning." Harry threw his head back and rested it on the back of the couch. Ginny leaned over and swatted him. "What, love, you know I'm right. I had to take your wand away before you hexed your own mother." "I know, Harry, but that's why we're here." They talked for a bit longer until Ron announced he was hungry. I grated to the kitchen where Hermione made some cheeseburgers and fries. "So, this is like ground-up steak on bread." Harry and Hermione had been explaining the basics of hamburgers for 10 minutes now. "Yes, Ronald, just like that." "Goodness. Eat up and I'll show you to your rooms. Jared, Paul, Jake, and Billy will be here in the morning and I'm making breakfast." Ron made a face at the use of his whole name but warily picked up his cheeseburger and took a bite. His face lit up and he shot a grin at Hermione before diving in. "You know, Hermione, I never figured you was the domestic type," Draco said casually, picking at his burger. "I never saw myself as that type either, but moving here and with Sam and the guys constantly over here, I find myself cooking because, Merlin, I never thought I'd say this. Those boys eat more than Ron. Plus, it's not like I need the money, with the Order of Merlin first-class reward, my parents' life insurance, what's serious left, and the interviews and book I did. I'm the third richest after you and Harry. And, I don't just sit around here and cook all day, I still do my research and stuff. I don't know, like I was telling Ginny, with Sam, everything just feels right." A small smile stole over her face. "Right, well if you lot are finished, let's get you settled in." Hermione showed them to their rooms. Harry and Ginny had the downstairs room, Draco in the room next to hers. And Ron on the couch as the last spare room had been converted into a library. Although it was 11 in the morning in England, It was 3 in the morning in a push and they were going to sleep for a few hours. Hermione woke at her usual time and took a long, hot shower and dressed in a dark green thermal shirt with a black lace camisole underneath and quarter-length denim pants that stopped mid-calf. She murmured a spell and her hair straightened out and fell to her waist. Once downstairs, she started on a full English breakfast and waited until the others got up. She had just placed the last platter on the table when she heard Paul and Jared call out and walk through the door. Jared whooped and ran to her, picking her up in a hug. Placing her hands on his shoulders, Hermione smiled down at him as he laughed. "It's about time the two of you went out." Paul nodded his head. "You've been dancing around each other for weeks now." It was getting irritating. At that moment, Harry, Ginny, Ron, and Draco burst in with wands drawn. "What's going on?" Jared set her down and pushed her behind him and Paul stepped next to him, creating a large wall to protect their alpha's imprint. Honestly, Hermione stepped out from behind Jared and Paul. She pat their arms and motioned for her friends to put their wands away. They did so reluctantly and sat around Hermione's table. "Now, if you're all done threatening each other about my safety, which might I add I can bloody well take care of myself." She sat down next to Draco and Paul. She flicked her wrist and fresh biscuits floated out of the oven and Draco jumped. "Oh, we know all about how you can protect yourself." Draco leaned back in his chair as everyone stared at him. "What? If you've ever been on the receiving end of her right hook you'd know damn well she can take care of herself and you'd be jumping every time she as much as looked at you, too." Paul and Jared looked Draco up and down and burst into laughter. "She's 5.5 foot and 100 pounds soaking wet, and you are afraid of Princess." Glaring at Paul, he turned to Hermione. "She's tiny but fierce. She broke my nose when we were 14. She's a grown woman now, and after certain life circumstances, how much harder do you think she hits?" "Shut up, Paul, you know you're scared too." She put Nina and Janine in their places. "She broke Nina's nose. Hermione gives you a dirty look, and you like a puppy with his tail in between his legs." Hermione giggled at his hidden joke. Ron and Harry laughed at the affronted look on Paul's face. Ginny raised an eyebrow. "And just what are you two laughing at? Might I remind you about what happened when you decided to use her copy of Hogwarts, A History as Footrest?" Ron absently rubbed his eye. And Harry crossed his legs. Ginny smirked. "I thought so. Hello." Billy wheeled into the kitchen with Jacob behind him. Hermione smiled warmly at them and made room for Billy at the table. "All right, since everyone's here, I'll introduce everyone." She started with Draco who was sitting next to her. She pointed to him and giggled when he flinched. "This is Draco Malfoy, Ron Weasley, Harry Potter, Ginny Weasley, Jacob Black, Billy Black, Jared Cameron and Paul LaHote." They all nodded and Ginny enthusiastically waved. "Ginny, Harry, Ron, and Draco are all visiting from England for a while. They'll be staying with me." "Cool, so, how'd the date go last night?" Hermione blushed but couldn't keep the grin off her face. Jared and Paul smirked at each other. "It was fantastic." She looked at everyone's still empty plates. "Dig in." She started loading her plate and everyone soon followed. "Holy crow. Hermione, you weren't kidding." Though Ron was a bot. Tomless pit, but these blokes put him to shame. Ginny looked at the heaps of food on Jared and Paul's plate to the smaller amount on Ron's. "So where is Loverboy today anyway?" Hermione was about to answer when the sliding glass door opened and Sam walked in. Sam, beaming at him, Hermione got up and kissed him on his cheek. "I thought you were going to be busy until the weekend." Sam grinned at her and shrugged his shoulders. "Change of plans. Enough for one more." Paul elbowed Jared in the ribs and they each scooted down a chair. Sam and Hermione sat down. "Of course. Oh, this is Draco Malfoy." Draco once again flinched when she pointed to him. "Bloody hell. I'm liable to piss myself before we leave. Someone switch me." Everyone except Billy, Jake, and Sam laughed. Seeing the confused look on Sam's face, Hermione hid her grin. "I may or may not have broke Draco's nose when we were 14. May or may not have my ass. I had to go to the hospital wing for that." Hermione crossed her arms over her chest. "You deserved it. You were being a spoiled brat. Wait till my father hears of this." Hermione mimicked and the Hogwarts alumni laughed except Draco. "What is this? Make fun of Draco Day, or something. Draco crossed his arms over his chest petulantly. Anyway, and that's Ron Weasley, Harry Potter, and Ginny Weasley. They'll be here for a while, they're visiting from England. It's nice to see you again, Sam. Sam nodded at Ginny. So what are your intentions with our Hermione? Draco along with Harry and Ron leaned forward. Oh, give it a rest, you lot. You're not my father. Well then, I'll just give Father and Severus a call and see what they say. Draco shot her a smug look. Hermione had saved Severus in the Shrieking Shack and since, had become like a daughter to the man, and since Draco's family had turned spy, Narcissa had taken Hermione under her wing and thus was adopted into the Malfoy family. You wouldn't dare. The smugness on his face slipped a little at Hermione's dark tone. Merely raising an eyebrow, Hermione returned to eating her food. I still can't believe you're afraid of itty-bitty Hermione. Paul snickered. Remember, Lahote, I cook almost all your meals. And as I stated before, I don't need my hands. The snickering stopped and Paul ducked his head and shoveled food into his mouth. Hermione nervously looked at herself in the mirror. Sam said to dress warm and comfortably, so she had donned on a pair of jeans, a pullover hoodie and a pair of comfortable boots. She left her hair down and trotted down the stairs to wait for Sam. Harry, Ginny, and Ron had decided to go to Seattle for a few days, and Sam invited Draco to the bonfire that night to help Hermione explain things to the elders. A short knock on her door broke her out of her reverie, and she and Draco walked to the door and out of the house. Sam gave Hermione a small peck on her lips and they piled into his truck. After a short drive and an almost hidden road, they parked beside a couple of other vehicles. Sam helped Hermione out and Draco followed behind them as they walked towards a fire where Quillatera 3, Billy Black, Harry Clearwater, Paul, and Jared were already seated. After introductions, they sat huddled together while Harry told them the legends of their tribe. Hermione sat on the edge of her log as the stories enthralled her. At one point, Draco had to drag her back onto the log and mumbled something under his breath along the line of, "Bloody know it all." As Billy weaved his tales, Hermione longed to get out a quill and parchment and take down notes. An hour later, Billy was done and they took a small intermission to eat some food. I just want to say on behalf of Draco and myself, we thank you with our deepest gratitude for including us in your heritage. Billy smiled at the young woman. I feel now is the best time for us to show you our secret. The elders looked confused. Sam had told her that he hadn't told the elders yet about her being a witch. He was waiting until a time like now, for her to explain it herself. Draco and I went away to a special boarding school when we were 11 and 12. Only certain people were accepted and it was a truly magical experience. One of the criteria to go to this school is you had to be a witch or wizard. The elders gaped in shock at the two. As you can guess, I'm a witch and Draco's a wizard. So you are wand wavers. Hermione nodded her head at Quill's question. I have heard of this wand wavers, old legends, but I never knew they were true. Would you like to see some of our magic? The elders nodded. Hermione stood up. She waved her wand and she conjured a rose out of midair. She grinned and gave it to Sam. His cheeks held a pink tint to them as Hermione blew him a small kiss. She stepped away and spun on the spot, disapparating and apparating on the other side of the fire. Pointing her wand at the fire, she whispered, Lacarnum inflammare. And the flames of the fire change. From the regular orange and red to her signature blue bell flames. Finite incantatum. Draco, would you like to show them our Patronus? Draco nodded and together they stood and thought of their happiest memory and shouted. Expecto Patronum. A silvery dragon silently roared and strutted around the fire from Draco's wand while a giant silver wolf burst forth from Hermione's and pranced playfully around. Hermione gaped. It's usually an otter. They only change when a witch or wizard has a life-changing event. Her and Draco cancelled the spells and sat back down. These are all relatively harmless, but there are much more brutal and sick spells out there. I know, I've had to use some. A war broke out in our world, and it was centered around my best friend and a Hitler wannabe. Will you tell us about the war? Harry spoke up. I can do you one better. There is a branch of mind magic that I've been researching based on legilimency, mind reading, and occlumency, protecting and blow. Seeking your mind from unwanted intrusions. There are objects called pensives which let someone view memories from another person. It's almost like you're really there, but it's just a memory. They can't see or hear you. I've created a spell that allows someone to view and experience memories without the use of such object, almost like reverse legilimency. I can use that to show you what I went through. During from when I first found out I was a witch until the war ended. Though, you will have vague feeling of the emotions I experienced, I haven't quite worked out how to completely block it out yet. Everyone nodded, and before Hermione performed the spell, she gave them one last warning. This is not pretty. Far from it. I literally went through hell in this war, and as a forewarning, there is torture. They gravely nodded. One last thing. Whatever you see of Draco, do not judge nor condemn him for what was thrust upon him. We have become very close, and I consider him like my brother. Very well, shall we? Hermione nodded at Billy and grasped her wand in one hand and Draco's hand in the other. She couldn't even look at Sam right now for fear of his reaction, although he heard her tell her stories. Experiencing it was a whole different matter. 3 hours later, Hermione sat huddled in Draco's embrace as she sobbed as the memories of her time at the manor played out. Draco clenched at his jaw and ignored the sting in his eyes as Hermione screamed, sobbed and pleaded with his crazy aunt as she crucioed countless times and used the cursed blade to carve her arm. When the memory of Ron and Hermione kissing came up, Hermione felt Sam tense at her side. She watched as her memory self and Ron antagonized the giant snake and fell as it lunged for them before having its head lopped off by Neville. Hermione looked around the great hall as families and friends huddled together and cried and mourned the dead while celebrating the defeat of Voldemort. She felt disconnected, so Mahal, and like she was forgetting something. It suddenly dawned on her. Hermione felt her muscles protest after nearly 3 days of no sleep and no food and lots of use. She was now sprinting across the charred lawn and hit the knob on the Whomping Willow with a stunner, and baseball slid into the secret passage. With scraped knees and bloody palms, she lifted herself out of the trapdoor and stopped at the sight that met her. Snape had managed to move slightly and was standing unsteadily on his feet against the wall. Are you going to stand there and imitate a goldfish all day, or are you going to use that big brain of yours and help? Snape's knees picked that time to buckle, and Hermione rushed forward and slowly lowered him to the floor. She unstoppered the Dittany and dropped several drops onto his gaping wound and watched as the skin sealed itself. Hermione panicked as Snape's eyes drooped shut. Hysterically crying and begging, she shakily unscrewed the lid for blood replenisher and forced his mouth open and dumped the potion in, making sure to massage his throat to make him swallow. As an afterthought, she extracted a bezoar from her trusty beaded bag and shoved that down his throat. She grabbed his ruined frock coat and paraded to the hospital wing. As the last few memories played out, Hermione stood up and walked a few feet away to stare at the ocean. She focused intently on the peaceful water and pushed the memories to the back of her mind while she waited for them to finish. Hermione was pulled from her thoughts as warm, strong arms wrapped around her from behind. She placed her smaller hands over his as they clasped together over her stomach, and Sam buried his face in her hair and inhaled deeply. I always knew you were a strong person, but after what I saw. He trailed off. I don't know what I would do if you never survived. He murmured softly. Hermione turned around in his arms and wrapped her arms around his waist as he pulled her tight against him. I have something else to tell you. One last secret, and that's all, I promise. Hermione nodded and looked up at him, in his eyes. One last legend of ours is about imprinting. Imprinting is where the wolf in us looks for our soul mate. The one, our perfect match. Imprinting is like, when you see her, nothing else matters. She becomes your whole world and everything changes. All of a sudden, it's not gravity holding you to the planet, it's her. Nothing else matters. You would do anything, be anything for her. A brother, a friend, a protector, a lover. Sam purred the word lover and Hermione felt her gut clench in anticipation. Her breaths were coming out in short pants and her pulse was racing. She gulped. You sound like you know from experience. Have you? She swallowed. Have you imprinted? Sam nodded. Does she know? She does now. And I'm hers anyway, she'll have me. Hermione felt her magic hum in response to his words and she prayed he would answer positively to her last question. She couldn't make herself form the words, so she pointed to herself. Yes, He breathed the answer and Hermione pulled him down by the back of his neck and they met in a searing kiss. Sam, I think I love you. He pulled her in for another kiss. I think I love you too. They grinned at each other before he leaned down to give her a small kiss and walked back to the fire. Everyone was lost. Anne thought as Hermione's memories replayed in their mind. Jesus fucking Christ, princess. Paul got up and crushed Hermione in a surprising hug. Jared got up and it turned into a three-way hug. I wish that Bellatrix bitch was still alive so I could tear her apart myself. Hermione untangled herself from the two and gave them a small smile. Young warrior, come here. Hermione walked curiously over to old Quill and kneeled down in front of him where he indicated. You are a worthy mate for a protector of our tribe and our people. You have the full blessing of the council and the elders in your union. He took her face in his old withered hands and brought her forward to place a kiss on each cheek and then on her forehead. Everyone gaped at the scene before them. Everyone knew how much old L despised pale faces and how irate he was to find out the alpha of the pack imprinted on one. You could hear a pin drop as he blessed her in ancient Quileute as a warrior for the tribe. Hermione gazed wide-eyed around at the council members and the wolves who returned her gaze. Welcome to the tribe, young one. Holy shit, dude. Sam smacked Paul on the back of his head before he scooped Hermione up and planted a big kiss on her lips. I mean, damn, we're only protectors of the tribe, she's a full-on warrior. A truly amazing thing. Perfect for our alpha. Billy grinned and they celebrated Hermione's newfound status in the tribe. Things between Sam and Hermione had been perfect for the last couple of months. Harry, Ginny, Ron, and Draco stayed for another week after the bonfire before going back to England. It was now the middle of December and Hermione was nervous as she sat waiting for Sam to arrive so they could flow to the Burrow for a few days for Harry and Ginny's wedding. Shish. Ort knock sounded on her door and Sam walked in. Hey babe. He smiled at her and she stood up and kissed him sweetly on the lips. Okay. Are you sure Jared and Paul will be okay? We'll be gone almost a week. They have Hades and my mobile number. I just hope. Sam cut her off before she could really start to babble. Hermione, they'll be okay. They're big boys. Besides, like you said, we can be back here in a flash. She smiled at him and he bent and kissed her on the nose. All right, this is a very difficult experience. Whatever you do, don't breathe in and don't let go of my hand. Sam nodded. They stepped into the grate and Hermione threw down the powder, shouting their destination. Hermione squeezed her eyes shut as the thousands of fireplace flew by them, until they arrived at the Burr. Ro and Hermione gracefully stepped out and hid a giggle behind her hand as Sam was sent sprawling on the floor. Oh, goodness. Up you go, dear. You must be Sam. Oh, it's so good to finally meet you. M was pulled down into a hug by a plump red-headed woman. My name is Molly, dear. She tsked. Yes, don't worry about that. Harry still has problems when he flows too. Hermione, sweetheart. Hermione was soon pulled into a hug by Molly. It's so good to see you, Mrs. Weasley. Now how many times have I told you to call me Molly, dear, or Mum, you know Arthur and I see you as one of the family. The two women smiled at each other. Now, lunch will be ready in about an hour. Everyone's outside playing Quidditch. Off you go, I'll give a shout when food's ready. Hermione laced her fingers with Sam's and weaved them through the house and out to the field. Sam gaped as he watched the kitchen dance while the dishes cleaned themselves and pots were stirred by an invisible hand. When they walked out into the blinding sunshine, all the Weasleys were present along with their wives and children. My. Hermione smiled widely and bent to pick up a small, tottering blonde beauty. Victoire. Auntie Hermione missed you, princess. Hermione blew raspberries on the girl's chubby cheeks. Victoire, this is Sam, can you say hi to Sam? The little girl burrowed her face into Hermione's neck and looked at the large man shyly before giving a meek wave. Auntie Hermione. Hermione set Victoire on the ground and barely caught a 2-year-old Teddy as he launched himself at her. She ended up on her bum in the grass with a blue-haired boy peppering her face with kisses as his hair changed from blue to red, and finally matching hers with honey-colored curls. Victoire shrieked in laughter and joined in. The two toddlers managed to knock Hermione on her back as they attacked her face with kisses. Sam watched his imprint with the children and couldn't help the smile that brightened his face when he hot about her round with his child and playing with their children like that. Victoire Molly Weasley, what is it you think you are doing? You'll ruin your pretty dress that way. Fleur Weasley bent over and scooped up her daughter. Once everyone realized what was going on, the game stopped and everyone ran to see Hermione. She was pulled off the ground by the twins and pulled into a hug. Hello everyone. I've missed you all. I'd like you all to meet my boyfriend Sam. Several faces were now looking at him and Sam felt Hermione sidle up to him and lace their fingers together. Sam, this is Bill, Charlie, Fred, George, Arthur, Fleur, Victoire, and Percy Weasley. You already know Ron, Harry, Ginny and Draco. And that's Andromeda Tonks, Teddy, Angelina, and Katie. Sam smiled at them and nodded his head. Wish you could play with us, mate. You'd make a damn good beater. Would you like a bit of candy? George smiled innocently at Sam. I swear, George Fabian Weasley, if you don't put that canary cream away. George stuck his tongue out at Hermione. No fun, my own. He and George took off on their brooms as everyone laughed. Sam, don't take anything the twins offer you, it's likely to turn you into something or mess with your appearance in some way. They once turned me blue with pink hair for a day. Pulling a face, she tugged on their joined hands and sat down to watch the game. Fred, George, Harry, Ginny, Ron, Draco, Katie, Angelina, Charlie, and Bill took to the sky again and they played Quidditch until Molly let them know lunch was ready. The large group piled around the outside table while Molly, Hermione, Ginny, and Fleur brought out all the food. Dig in. Lunch started off innocently enough for a Weasley meal. Everyone seemed to like Sam and got along with him and He was currently in an in-depth conversation with Arthur and Bill about shape-shifting when Hermione let out a howl of rage. Every head snapped towards her as she stood up. Fred and George tried to loo. Kay innocent as she tried talking and all that came out were barks and howls. Her nose elongated and turned into a snout and her ears transformed into wolf ears. Hermione snarled at the twins and they took off running with Hermione hot on their heels. Sam didn't know whether to laugh or defend his mate. His choice was made when one of the twins tripped up and was transfigured into a weasel. Hermione conjured a cage around him and left him while she chased after the other one. Several pops were heard as they apparated around the yard and in the house. A crash sounded from the house, a howl, and several curse words. A few minutes later, a triumphant Hermione emerged, completely cured and sat down and finished eating as if nothing happened. George walked out with a scowl on his face as Tentac Les writhed on top of his head where his hair should be and his face was covered in boils. He also walked with a slight limp and it looked like he was beginning to show a black eye. Sam looked from High's imprint to the animal twin to the gross one who stood off to the side eating as his mother wouldn't let him anywhere near the table and chortled. Yes, his girl could surely take care of herself. The next few days passed in a blur as the burrow was transformed for Harry and Ginny's wedding. Hermione had been tasked with picking up some more decorations and was dreading going to Diagon Alley. She sought out Sam, who was in an enthusiastic discussion with Harry and Draco about formations for the next Quidditch game. Sam, would you want to visit Diagon Alley with me? The discussion stopped. Hermione, are you sure? You know this will be all over the front page of the Prophet. Harry looked concerned. I know, but Molly needs me to go and I really think Sam will like it. What do you mean? Sam looked confused. Mate, didn't she tell you why she moved to La Push? Hermione can't go anywhere in public in the wizarding world without making the front page of the newspaper for a week afterwards. You're dating your own celebrity. Haven't you wondered why she never took up a job? She's the third richest witch or wizard in Europe after myself and Harry. Sam looked gobsmacked at the sheepish Hermione. I know you said you were a war hero, but I didn't think. Sam tapered off as he thought back to their time together. Well damn, I don't know why I never thought of that before. She's also made Witch Weekly's most eligible bachelorette for the past 6 months. You'd go on a rampage if you'd see the sheer number of proposals she's burned before she moved. Oof. Draco rubbed his sore ribs where Hermione elbowed him. That's enough, Draco. Geez. I'll tell Mother how you keep abusing me. Oh yes. Go running to Mummy, I'm sure she'll take your side for once. Hermione smirked. She turned to Sam. Well, I'd understand if you don't want to go, but I think you'll really like it. Yeah, of course I'll go. Can't throw you to the wolves, can I? Hermione snickered. Come on you, hold on now. She apparated them to the leaky cauldron. She waited for his stomach to settle before they walked through the dingy bar and Hermione waved at Tom. Good to have you back, Miss Granger. Sue, missed that pretty face around these parts. Hermione smiled and pulled Sam to the back where he watched in fascination as the bricks rearranged themselves into an archway after Hermione tapped them with her wand. She pulled her cloak around her and pulled her hood up. Okay, first, I've got to go to Gringotts Bank for a withdrawal. Sam nodded and they walked to the imposing building. Now, it's run by goblins, so don't be alarmed. And well, you've seen why, but they don't really like me too much. Sam snorted. You broke into a supposedly unbreak-in-able place, stole their dragon, and tore up the building. I wouldn't exactly expect them to be singing your praises. He laughed as she swatted him on the chest. When they arrived in the bank, Hermione lowered her hood and walked up to a station. I wish to enter my vault. Ah, Miss Granger. Always a pleasure. He shot a pointy-toothed smile at her as he somehow also sneered. Yes, well, I of course need the proper identification. She NDED him her key and her wand so everything could be checked over. Very well, follow me. They loaded themselves into a cart and Hermione gripped Sam's hand as they plummeted through the caverns to her vault, which was now lower as she gained more wealth. Sam whooped and laughed during the ride while Hermione clenched her jaw in order to keep from throwing up. When they passed under the thief's downfall, Hermione growled under her breath when the goblin smirked at her over his shoulder. Bloody goblins, holding a damn grudge, already paid for the damage. Hermione kept muttering as she waved her wand over herself and Sam to dry them off. They finally came to a stop and Sam helped Hermione out of the cart. That was awesome. It was like a roller coaster ride. Hermione gave him a tight smile as her stomach settled itself. The goblin undid the necessary enchantment and Hermione opened the door and walked in. Sam stood still, stunned at the mountain of gold, heirlooms, and precious artifacts in her vault. He let out a low whistle. Jesus, Hermione. She shot Sam a sheepish smile. You're filthy stinkin' rich. We're filthy stinking rich, Sam. You're it for me. This is all yours too. You don't have to take on any more odd-and-end jobs if you don't want to. She walked over to him and placed her finger over his lips. Sam, you do so much for me, let me take care of you now. Yo. My life and you have bigger things to worry about than how to scrape together money for this or that. I was actually going to wait to ask this, and I know it's rather fast, but Sam, would you like to move in with me? You practically live there anyway. Sam picked Hermione up and spun her around before kissing her. Hell yeah, I'll move in. He set Hermione down so she could fill her bag with gold. 20 minutes later, Hermione made sure her hood was up and grabbed Sam's hand as they walked quickly through Diagon Alley, making a couple of stops here and there. They were down to the last ing on Molly's list when a gust of wind blew Hermione's hood off. Bugger. Hermione couldn't get it back up fast enough and soon, a crowd gathered around her and Sam. The crowd attracted photographers and journalists alike and Sam had to hide his eyes against the bright flashes. Miss Granger, where do you keep disappearing to? Are the rumors true, Miss Granger? Are you living with vampires now? Miss Granger. Who is the lovely young man whose arm you're on? Miss Granger. Miss Granger. Miss Granger. Hermione had finally had enough and pushed through the crowd with Sam right behind her. She kept telling herself Kingsley would be disappointed if he saw her in a ministry-holding cell for hexing people in Diagon Alley. She purposely strode down the street, ignoring the people shouting at her, until she walked around a corner and right into a solid, black chest. My, Hermione, you should watch where you're walking. The slow, careful drawl of Severus made Hermione's head snap up and a grin lit her face. Severus. She threw her arms around him in a hug and he gently patted her back before extracting himself. Are you running from the press also? Those dim-witted dunderheads know better than to pester me with such inane things. And you know I don't run from anything except the women throwing themselves at me and propositioning me. Hermione laughed at the expression on his face. He turned his attention to Sam, who was standing right behind Hermione. Sam was pleased to note he had at least 2 inches on whoever this was and stood at his full height. Severus Obsidian Yes seemed to see into his very soul as he gazed intently at him. Severus Snape, you better leave him alone and get out of his mind. I'm just making sure the pup is good enough for you. Hermione read at him and crossed her arms over her chest. Severus, play nice, I happen to kinda like him. Like indeed. I'm sure Lucius and Cissa will be thrilled to hear how you're in the country and haven't been to visit them yet. A look of horror dawned on Hermione's face. Bloody hell, Cissa will string me up by my toes. Sam, we have to go to Malfoy Manor, are you okay with that? He nodded and she vanished their pull from the day back to the burrow. Will you be joining us, Severus? He nodded and they disapparated with 2 small pops. They arrived outside the biggest house Sam had even seen. Hermione took a couple of calming breaths and squared her shoulders, and raised her chin in the air. As the trio walked up the grand steps, the doors opened on their own and admitted them into the manor. Sam watched as 2 pale, platinum blondes, who he guessed were Draco's parents, regally walked down the stairs. Hermione was pulled into a tight hug by the blonde woman and then her husband. I'd like you to meet my boyfriend Sam. Sam, these are Draco, parents Lucius and Narcissa Malfoy. Sam gave them a small smile that Narcissa returned and Lucius merely raised an eyebrow at. Severus smirked and walked over to his friend and whispered in his ear. Indeed. So, because of this wolf thing, you think you have some sort of claim on our Hermione? Well, we'll just see about that. Hermione groaned. This was going to be a long visit. Lucius and Severus grilled Sam for about an hour about his relationship with Hermione and his role as alpha. They had him phase and were vaguely impressed by his size. As they were ready to leave, Hermione hugged each of them and promised to write more often. Sam shook hands with Severus and Lucius and kissed the back of Narcissa's hand. Hermione collapsed into a chair back at the burrow and let out a sigh of relief. Hermione, you have some intimidating friends. Hermione threw her head back and laughed. The day of the wedding final. Y was here and Hermione was putting the finishing touches in Ginny's hair. She curled it and pinned it to one side and her hair cascaded over one shoulder. Her flaming red hair was littered with pearl pins and a blue hair comb that had been in the Weasley family for generations. Her dress was simple yet elegant and beautiful. It was strapless, corseted with a satin and lace skirt made of the purest white material. After Hermione secured the veil, she bid Ginny good luck and led Arthur in. Hermione smoothed her gold spaghetti-strapped dress and made sure her hair was in place. She left it curly, and pinned half of it up to keep it out of her face. She squared her shoulders and smiled at Ron as her appeared to escort her down the aisle. The Weasleys' yard was filled with even more people than Bill and Fleur's wedding. Hermione and Ron smiled as they walked towards Kingsley and Harry. Hermione spied Sam sitting next to Charlie and Andromeda and waved. Hermione and Ron were followed by Neville and Luna and Fleur and Draco. Victoire and Teddy toddled down the aisle toward Hermione and Fleur as the ring bearer and flower girl. Everyone stood as Ginny and Arthur walked down the aisle. Hermione looked at Harry. He beamed at his future wife and had eyes only for her. The ceremony was over a short while later and the reception was in full swing. Sam and Hermione twirled around the dance floor to a couple of songs until Sam received a tap on his shoulder. Severus stood behind them. May I? From there Hermione was passed off to Lucius, Harry, Ron, Arthur, Charlie, Fred, George, Seamus, Neville, and Draco. Draco led me to Sam. I can't dance one more second. These shoes, she pointed to the strappy heels on her feet, are killing me. Draco laughed and twirled her to Sam, who was fighting off the advances of several former Gryffindors who hadn't seen Sam and Hermione together. Hermione, how are you? Do you know who this lovely specimen of a man is? Hermione smirked at Alicia Spinnet. Girls, I'd like you to meet my boyfriend Sam. Sam smiled gratefully at Hermione and pulled her into his lap. The 5 former Gryffindors went slack-jawed at the sight. Hot damn, Hermione, who knew you had it in you? The girls laughed and walked away. Sam buried his face in her hair and inhaled her calming aroma. Hermione giggled and took off her strappy heels and massaged her sore feet. Reception lasted about an hour longer before Harry whisked Ginny off for their honeymoon and the guest retired for the night. Hermione was excited to learn that Bella had started to come out of her depression and was hanging out with Jacob. Charlie had called the day after she and Sam returned from England and talked to her about how he was going to send her to Jacksonville to live with her mother. That night, Bella went to the movies with her old friend Jessica and ended up at Jacob's the next day. That was a month ago and Hermione was glad her cousin was almost back to her usual self. She was just setting the table for her, Paul, Jared, and Sam, when a growling and howling stopped her. She peeked out the sliding glass doors and saw a large light gray wolf with dark patches whimpering in her backyard. Hermione knew it was one of the boys from the res but she didn't know which one. Hermione knew Sam and the guys were on their way soon and she didn't know how to get a hold of them, so she called Billy and Harry Clearwater. Once she hung up the phone, she made sure she had her wand on her and slowly made her way to the wolf. "Shish, it's okay. Calm down, I'm not going to hurt you. Help is on the way. My name's Hermione and I'm going to help you through this, okay?" The wolf just whimpered and lay on the ground, his massive head on his paws. Hermione made it to the wolf and cautiously sat down a few feet away. She extended her hand and waited until the wolf crawled to her and laid his head in her lap. She rhythmically ran her fingers through his surprising thick, soft fur. She hummed a light tune and around 10 minutes later, she felt a shift and looked at the russet-skinned boy with his head in her lap. She waved her wand over him and a white shirt and shorts appeared on him. "There, that's better isn't it? You're Jacob's friend Embry, right?" He looked at her through his curtain of hair with wide eyes. She smiled and began picking leaves and debris out of his ebony locks. "What's going on?" He sat up and looked at her. "Come, let's get you inside. Sam will be here along with Billy and Harry and they'll tell you what's going on. I'll make you some tea that will help calm you down." He quickly stood up and helped her off the ground. They turned around and Sam, Jared, Paul, Billy, and Harry were standing on her porch with worried looks on their faces. "Hermione, you could have been hurt." Sam looked furious. She stepped in front of Embry and crossed her arms. "He could have hurt you like Paul did." Paul had a pained look on his face and wouldn't look her in the eye. "Samuel Joshua Yulee, I can take care of myself," and he was scared and angry. "Sometimes it takes a woman's touch and I knew he wouldn't hurt me." Sam glared at Embry over her head. "Don't you look at him that way. This is a very difficult time for him and you need to make him feel as comfortable as possible." Sam sighed. She was right. "I'm sorry Hermione, it's just, I know how it is the first time phasing. It took the elders hours to calm me down after I had disappeared for a few weeks and even then, I had a hard time keeping a hold of my temper." "Well, that's because, no offense, Ned to Harry and Billy who waved it away, they don't have the particular gentleness and calming nature needed in these situations." She turned to look at Embry. "Come on then, I promised you tea and they will explain everything." Embry sat at the table next to Hermione as she doctored him up some chamomile tea and fixed him a plate of pork chops in cream of mushroom gravy, corn on the cob, peas, homemade bread and mashed potatoes. Once she set the plate in front of him, he eagerly dug in and gulped down the tea. He had been at home with his mom, feeling feverish and volatile when they had gotten into an argument about his grades and he stormed out of the house. He felt a weird tingling sensation down his spine and the next thing he knew, he was a giant wolf. He was scared and angry and ran through the woods for some time until he tripped over his overly large paw and tumbled out of the forest onto the beach by a secluded house and Hermione came out. He had seen her around Jacob's house and around town with Sam, Paul, and Jared but he'd never talked to her. He was scared he would lash out like he did with his mom but she patiently waited for him to come to her and she had such a soothing aura about her. He felt drawn to her and she began petting him, a humming and a strange calmness and clarity washed over his body and he was suddenly human again. After everyone finished eating, they gathered in Sam and Hermione's living room and Billy wove his magic with his words and told Embry the legends of their people and explained how everything was real. He looked at everyone wide-eyed and felt a small hand on his arm, patting it reassuringly, and looked down at Hermione who hadn't left his side since she found him outside. She then told him about herself and what she had been through. "So where does Hermione fit in all this?" Sam beamed down at Hermione when Embry voiced this question. "It's very rare, but I imprinted on Hermione. She's my everything and I would do anything to make her happy." Sam and the elders then went on to explain imprinting. So she's like the den mom or something. Hermione laughed. I guess you could say that. Don't be shy, this is where you usually find the boys if they're not in town causing mayhem and mischief. She shot a pointed look at Paul. Feel free to come over anytime, I'm usually here, if not, the door is always unlocked. And she cooks. Hermione laughed at Jared. Is that the only thing on your mind, Jared? She turned to Embry and eyed his hair. You might consider a haircut. Your long hair probably makes your coat thick and heavy. But yes, I cook all the time, so if you're a bit peckish, stop by, even if I'm not here. It hasn't stopped this lot from raiding my stores. But don't let her catch you fooling around with any of the slags, as she calls them. She very protective of us. It wouldn't be a problem, Lahote, if you'd keep it in your trousers. Sam and the rest of the pack returned to the kitchen to come up with a new patrol schedule while Hermione saw Billy and Harry out. Okay, so you want me to patrol until 8 in the morning? What about school? Embry looked at his new alpha. Sam, you better change that. I'll not have you messing with his school work. Sam nodded sheepishly at his imprint. Embry, how are you doing in school? If you need help, I'm here to help with that also. Geez, Hermione, don't you have a job or something? Actually, Embry, I don't need one. Besides, I have a full-time job taking care of this lot. She smiled fondly at her boys. Yeah, I've always wondered about that but never had the guts to ask. Are you loaded or something? Hermione blushed. Sam was the only one who knew about her wealth here and she didn't want them to treat her any different. She looked up at Paul. I'm pretty well off, you could say. Just well off. She's the third richest witch or wizard in Europe. Her vault at the Wizarding Bank has mountains of gold and other crap in there. Other 3 pack members looked at her in surprise. You'd never guess with the way she behaves. Hermione glared at Jared. Well, I don't feel the need to buy obscenely expensive things and rub it in everyone's face. The most expensive things I buy are my books and food for you lot. Sam's got a sugar mama. Paul wriggled his eyebrows at Sam while the rest laughed. But seriously, until you can get a better hold on your temper. You're kinda in a quarantine, then after that, you can go back to school, but you'll pretty much have to avoid everyone but us. Sam gave Embry a serious look. So, does this mean I can't hang out with Jacob or Quill anymore? Embry asked sadly. Sadly, yes, but we'll help you get through it. Now, about your hair. Hermione stood behind him and ran her fingers through his inky black tangled hair. Embry easily fit himself in with the pack and started loving his new life beside the fact that he couldn't talk to his best friends. He took her suggestion seriously and cut all of his hair off, and she was right, he felt much lighter when he phased. He hated it, but Hermione had gone on a shopping spree for the pack because they were tearing through their clothes at a ferocious speed. She said she was working on spell to make it to where their clothes phased with them, but she was having difficulties with it. It just makes me mad. When an animagus transforms, they take their clothes with them. You lot just shred yours, then when you phase back, you're as naked as the day you were born. I love you lot to death, but I don't want to see you naked. Jared, Paul, and Embry laughed. I'm serious. Watch. Hermione concentrated and her limbs shortened and she felt her animagus transformation complete. Where Hermione just stood, there was now a large pure white husky dog. She let out a small bark and wagged her tail and transformed back into her normal self with her clothes. I didn't know you could do that. Hermione looked at Sam with wide eyes. I swore I told you. I'm sorry, love, but that's not fair. You still have your clothes. Mom's been up my ass about all the clothes that's gone missing and how I never wear a shirt unless I'm at school. The group laughed. Charlie asked me the other day if any of you even owned shirts and how you were never sick. A few weeks later, the guys decided to go cliff jumping and asked if she wanted to go. Bugger that. Thanks but no thanks. I prefer to keep my firmly on the ground where they belong. She shooed them out the door and went upstairs to take herself a bubble bath and relax for the day. After 2 hours in the bath, Hermione dressed in a pair of Sam's sweatpants and her favorite gray shirt she had acquired from him when they first met. She set out her books and made herself comfortable in her library. Bella and Jacob were driving down the road to a spot where they could ride their bikes when Bella spotted Sam Yulee and a few other guys standing on the edge of a cliff. Is that Sam Yulee? Jacob made a face. Yeah, him and his cult. Bella watched as two of the guys held a third guy's arms and threw him off the cliff and whooped. She slammed on her brakes, threw it in park, and bolted out of her truck. Oh, my God, did you see that? She was horrified. Did her cousin know about this? They still weren't on speaking terms, but she would always love her cousin. Jacob got out of the True CK with a much more sedated pace and laughed. Bella looked back at him with an astonished look on her face. They're not really fighting, Bella. They're cliff diving. It's scary as hell, but a total rush. A rush. She felt the idea plant itself in her mind. Most of us jump from lower down and leave the showing off to Sam and his disciples. Bella calmed her heart and walked back towards the truck and Jacob. You got some kind of beef with him or something? I don't know. They just think they run this place. Embry used to call them hall monitors on steroids. Now look at him. Bella looked at the glare Jake was sending to the remaining guys on the cliff. That's Embry. Yeah, what happened to him? He missed some school, then all of a sudden, he started following Sam around like a little puppy. Same thing happened with Paul and Jared. He looked down, then back up out to the water. Sam keeps giving me this look, like he's waiting for me or something. It's kinda starting to freak me out. Bella felt chills go down her spine. Well, you should just avoid him. I try. Jake looked her in her eyes. Bella looked back and watched as Sam jumped and spread his arms, gracefully diving into the water. A little niggling in the back of her mind. She brushed it off and her and Jake got back into the truck and drove off without another look back. About a week after the pack went cliff diving, Hermione was sitting in her living room, working on some research when she got a frantic call from Billy. I think Jacob is about to go through the change. He just got back from a movie with Bella and her friend and he's running a temperature and he's very angry. Hermione, I know Sam's on patrol right now but he was cut off by the sound of ripping clothes and a howl. Hermione cursed Hen. The line went dead and ran upstairs to change. She tried Paul's line first and no one answered so she tried Jared's next. Jared, thank God. Hermione, what is it? Are you okay? Yes, I'm fine, but I need you to phase and tell Sam to meet me at Billy's. Jacob phased. Shit, yeah, no problem, thanks. She hung up the phone and threw on a pair of shoes and grabbed her wand before parting to Billy's. She heard loud crashing and things breaking in the house and ran in, hoping that Jacob didn't accidentally hurt himself or Billy. She entered through the front door and crept around the corner. The table was splintered with broken chairs littered around it and cabinet doors hung off their hinges. Hermione could see claw marks on the floor and on the walls. She crept silently down the all with her wand drawn and saw a mass of russet fur curled up on the floor. Jacob. The russet wolf lifted his head and gazed sorrowfully at her. She looked beyond him and saw Billy panting in the sea. Orner with a scratch mark on his arm that was bleeding lightly. Hermione sank to her knees and crawled over to Jacob. Oh Jacob, it's okay, he knows you didn't mean it. Hermione rested her forehead against his and looked in his eyes. Jacob, I need you to do me a favor, okay? I need you to think of some happy thoughts, calming thoughts, human thoughts. She situated herself so she was mimicking the day she found Embry. She gently stroked Jacob's fur and hummed a light tune. She gave Sam and the pack a smile when they walked in and Jacob scooted so he was between them and her. Jacob, it's okay, they mean you or I no harm. It took several hours, but eventually Jacob calmed down and phased back to his human form. Billy handed him some clothes and he quickly dressed. Dad, I'm so sorry, I don't know what's wrong with me. Hermione placed a hand on his arm to calm his shaking down. Sam, will you make Jacob some tea while I heal Billy? Sam nodded and left to go make a pot of tea while he. RMI1 pulled out her dittany and unstoppered it. Now Billy, this will sting, but only for a moment. Billy nodded and Hermione put a few drop on the 3 claw marks and watched as the skin stitched itself back together. What the hell is going on here? Jacob was shaking again. Hermione stood up to her full height, which was only to Jacob's shoulder and glared at him. Jacob Ephraim Black, don't you use that tone with me. I know you're angry and confused but there is no need for that. Now, go sit your ass in the kitchen and Billy will explain everything. Jacob glared defiantly at her for a moment. March, He felt compelled to listen to her and angrily stomped into the kitchen where Sam was just finishing the tea. What are they doing here? He glared at Sam and the rest of the pack. Drink the tea first. Jacob obediently took a large gulp of the liquid and felt himself instantly calm a little bit. Seeing this, Hermione gestured for Billy to start. Once he was finished, Hermione told her secrets. So the legends, they're all true. The Cullens are vampires. Billy and Sam nodded. Jacob started shaking again. And Bella was with that filthy leech. Jacob, outside. He got up, at Hermione's orders, and bolted out the door. Sam and the other followed, and there were a chorus of howls and galloping feet as they ran through the woods. All right, Billy, I'm going home. Let me know if you need anything. Thank you. He grasped her hand in his and she bent to kiss his cheek. You know it's no problem. I'll see you later, Billy. She gave him one last smile and vanished with a small crack. Hermione had been laying in her bed for about an hour when the bed dipped and Sam pulled her against him and nuzzled her neck. How'd it go? She murmured sleepily. It was all right. I had to order him not to tell Bella though. I think that's only the second time I've ever used my alpha voice. He's not happy about it, to say the least. Hermione rolled over and crawled on top of him and draped her body over his. Every time they touched, Hermione's magic hummed and made it very hard to control herself. Since they'd been living together for the last few weeks, it was almost unbearable. Their lips met and battled for dominance as Sam's hands roamed over her curves. His fingertips trailed along her thighs, hips and finally up her torso, dragging her shirt up in the process. Hermione shuddered at the feeling and nipped, kissed, and sucked along Sam's jaw and neck. She got to his juncture between his neck and shoulder, bit down. Jesus, Hermione, if we keep up like this, I won't be able to stop. Hermione bit down again. What if I don't want you to stop? That was all Sam needed to hear, and he brought her lips back up to his and kissed her with an almost bruising force. His hands were fisted in the back of her shirt, and when she ground herself on his erection, he growled and flexed his arms, and her flimsy shirt ripped under his strong hands. The material hung on her smaller frame as he rubbed his hands over her smooth back. Her hair hung around them like a curtain around them, with their pants and heavy breathing filling the silence around them. Hermione slid down his RGE frame until she got to the mesh shorts he was wearing, leaving a trail of hot open-mouthed kisses in her wake. Small hands gripped the waistband of the shorts and dragged them down his lean thighs and legs. He kicked them off when she got to his ankles and slowly slid back up his body. Sam groaned as she palmed him through his boxers and nipped at the sensitive skin around his hips and the tops of his boxers. Having had enough of her teasing, Sam gripped her arms and pulled her back up before flipping them over. He pulled the tattered remains of Hermione's shirt off and gazed hungrily at her bare breast. Hermione gazed back at him with lust-filled eyes, and he slowly leaned forward and captured a small, hurt nipple in his hot mouth and swirled his tongue around it. With her back arching off the bed, Hermione dug her fingers into his hair and scraped her nails across his scalp. Sam rolled the other nipple between his thumb and forefinger before switching and doing the same to the opposite. Sliding his hands under her back, Sam wandered down her body, kissing and lavishing her scars as he went. As his hands and lips roamed her body, he looped his thumbs in her shorts and knickers and slowly rolled them down her curvaceous form. He sat back on his knees and tossed the garments behind him and took her dainty foot in his hand and kissed the inside of her ankle. He growled appreciatively as the scent of her arousal hit him, and Hermione's belly tightened in response. He licked from the inside of her knee to her inner thigh and settled in between her legs. He lightly nipped and licked everywhere except where Hermione would kill for him to. When his tongue finally found her hidden nub, his large hands had to hold her to the bed as she loudly moaned and fisted his hair. He swirled his tongue and inserted a finger into her wet folds and set an antagonizing slow pace. Hermione's body tingled and hummed at Sam's ministrations, and she felt a pressure building deep in her stomach. He feverishly attacked her hidden nub as his fingers pumped into her moist center. With her back bowing off the bed, Hermione moaned and dug her fingers roughly in his hair. Blowing a small puff of air over her clit and flicking his tongue over it, Hermione had an earth-shattering orgasm. Sam lapped greedily at her juices and crawled slowly up her languid body, nestling himself between her creamy thighs. Are you sure about this, Hermione? Once we do this, there's no going back. Sam, please, if we do this, I will mark you as mine tonight. You will be mine forever as I am yours. If we do this, we will be bound eternally. Will you be mine forever? Will you be my wife? Sam hadn't counted on pouring all that out there, but it just felt right. Yes, anything Sam, anything, just make me yours. I need you inside me. Please, please. That was all the confirmation he needed, and he slowly began sliding into her slick, wet folds. He heard her murmur something and a glow enveloped her stomach. I'm ready to be yours. Just not ready to be a mum yet. Sam nodded and kissed her roughly as he entered her and felt her barrier break. When he smelt her maidenhood fade away, his wolf howled and clawed its way to the front. Hermione felt his demeanor shift and his eyes had a yellow ring around them, and she knew his wolf had taken over. Make me yours, she whispered, and she didn't have to tell him twice. As she always figured it would hurt, her first time, she was surprised when all she felt was lust, pleasure, and possessiveness. As she looked at her wolf, fear was the furthest thing from her mind, and she wriggled her hips to get him moving. He slowly sunk further into her before sliding back out painfully slow. He kept us this pace, teasing her and make her mule and whine. Sam, please. He smirked at her, kissed her, and sat up on his knees while bringing her legs up around his shoulders. He hissed at the tightness and had to close his eyes to gain some control back. Finn. Ally began moving in her again at a slightly fast pace as she moaned lowly and breathed harshly. They locked eyes and he kissed her passionately and slid out of her. Hermione whined and he chuckled before flipping her over onto her hands and knees. He didn't give her any time to adjust and swiftly entered her again as he gripped the swell of her hips and vigorously pounded into her. His name tumbled from her lips like a chant, and the wolf in him howled in pleasure. His mouth filled with saliva and he knew it was time. Sweeping her hair to the side, he leaned forward and licked right below her right ear. Shivering under him, Hermione waited with bated breath until she felt him sink his teeth into her. Her magic surged and she came instantly, pulsing around his hardened member and milking him when he came shortly after. Ungracefully falling to the bed, Sam curled around Hermione and the two fell instantly asleep. Hermione grumbled the next morning at Jared downstairs, whooping and hollering. Kill him. Skin his furry ass for a new rug, wolf stew. Sam chuckled at his maid and fiancé. At the thought of last night, a large grin split his face, but he secretly agreed with her. Shish. Angrily stepped into a pair of boy-cut underwear and slid on her favorite shirt before stomping downstairs. Jared Cameron, you'd better have a damn good reason for interrupting us like this. Hermione stalked into the kitchen, ready to curse him until she took in the beautiful native girl standing at Jared's side. Shit. Jared burst into laughter at her curse word. Damn it, Jared, you could have told me you brought company. Sam laughed at her as he walked in and handed her a pair of yoga pants that she hastily put on. I apologize. My name is Hermione. Nice to meet you. The girl tucked in Jared's side blushed bright red and shook Hermione's hand. Kim Meraz, it's nice to meet you too. The girl tried looking anywhere but at the blushing Hermione and the two shirtless wolf men standing around. Although, it didn't look like Jared was going to let her go anytime soon. With a scrunched up face, Hermione looked between Jared and Kim and the looks he was shooting her before it dawned on her. Oh, Jared grinned at her and barely nodded his head. Well then, I'll make breakfast, the rest of the guys should be showing up soon. Kim, why don't you help? We can get to know each other because something tells me we're going to be seeing a lot of each other in the future. The two women made their way into the kitchen and began getting out things to make a large, hearty breakfast. Wow, this is a lot of food. How many people are gonna be here? Kim looked nervous and Hermione just smiled at her before replying. Well, there's Sam, Jared, Paul, Embry, Jacob, you, and me. Kim looked at all the food laid out before them. They were making oversized cranberry and orange muffins, scrambled eggs, bacon, French toast, and sausage. Who's going to eat all this? Kim's eyes were huge, as she looked between Hermione and the food. Trust me, we'll be lucky if there are crumbs left, my boys can eat. Hermione laughed as she put the muffin mix in the oven. Your boys? Kim seemed a little unsure of herself. Well, it's hard to explain. Since I moved to the res from my uncle's house, Sam, Jared and Paul have been helping me with fixing up the house. My friends back home call me a mother hen because I'm constantly taking care of everyone I know. I kind of adopt people. Sam and I, well, we fell in love and with him came his friends and I just take care of them, make sure they have enough food, that they sleep. That kind of stuff, they're just my boys. Kim smiled shyly at her and paused thinking about how she was going to word her next statement without offending her host. Well see. There's this rumor going around town about Sam and how he runs a gang. He disappeared for a few weeks and when he came back, he was different, shut off. He even broke off his engagement to Leah Clearwater and they'd been together all through high school and then some. He's always seen around town with Jared and Paul and now Embry Call and Jacob Black. Plus when he came back, he was huge. I mean it looked like he had taken steroids or something. Hermione patted her arm. I can't get into too much detail right now, that's for Jared to talk to you about, but it's not a gang. Sam went through a rough time and now he's helping the other boys sort out their stuff too. Sam is the best man I know. They are all good men, they help with the council and around the res. Shooting her a smile, Hermione flipped the bacon before she spoke again. I know it seems silly, you just met me, but trust me, you have nothing to worry about with Jared by your side. Now, tell me all about how you met. A blush stained Kim's cheeks and she looked around to make sure the girls were in the kitchen alone. I've sort of been in love with Jared since our freshman year. I always wanted him to notice me and it seemed like he never did. He was always off with Paul, getting him out of trouble. Then, months ago, I started seeing him always with Sam and Paul and he always looked angry until about 3 months ago. Today, I literally ran into him while I was shopping and he had this big goofy grin on his face and I had never seen him so happy. He kind of told me he was taking me to breakfast, and didn't give me a chance to answer before dragging me here. A knowing smile lit Hermione's face just as 3 more shirtless men tumbled into her kitchen via the sliding glass door. You boys act anything and you'll be banned from my kitchen for a month. She glared at them. Hermione, you wouldn't be so cruel as to do that, would you? Embry gave her his best puppy dog look and kissed her on the cheek. Yeah, you know you love us. Jacob kissed her other cheek. Besides, it's not like you don't have a shitload of money and could just buy new shit. Paul crossed his arms at her and shot her a cocky grin. Just because I have the money doesn't mean I want to keep replacing my furniture. Rubbing his arm and glaring at her, Paul tried to take the wooden spoon Hermione swatted him with. Hush you big baby, you know that didn't hurt. Hermione ushered Kim to sit down and swatted the hands that tried to reach for the food. You know the rules, ladies first. This is Kim by the way, Jared brought her over. The meaningful look she shot the 3 had them grinning as they took her hint. And you know how I feel about that language Lahote, you also need to save some for your brothers. Sam and Jared should be in here any moment. As if on cue, the 2 walked in sporting matching grins. Jared sauntered over to her and kissed her on the cheek. You know I love you my own, I didn't mean to interrupt anything. He wriggled his brow suggestively and danced out of the way of Hermione's spoon. The boys waited until Hermione and Kim got their food before eagerly digging in. After a laughter-filled breakfast, Kim helped Hermione do the dishes and clean up the kitchen. You weren't kidding. Geez, I don't think I've ever seen someone put away so much food. I don't see how you're not broke from feeding these guys. They're like ravenous wolves. They guys burst into laughter in the living room and Hermione giggled. Honey, you have no idea. Kim gave her an odd look and they quickly finished their work and settled into the living room. Kim, you want to take a walk with me? Kim nodded and the 2 said their goodbyes and headed out to the beach. Wow, 2 imprints already. Hot, it was supposed to be super rare or something like that. Sam nodded at Jacob. When his face lit up, Sam had a defeated look on his face. Jacob, you still can't be around Bella, your temper is too volatile and you could end up hurting her. I would never hurt her. His body was blurring before their eyes and Hermione decided to take over. Jacob, settle down, you wouldn't do it on purpose, we know that, but look. You're about to phase right here in my living room over a simple statement. Empathy radiated off Hermione as she watched Jacob hang his head in shame. But if she could just know. The deep timbre of an alpha order rang through the house. Jacob, you are not to tell Bella about this. She cannot know about the pack. I don't care if she kept the leech's secret or not, you know the rules and you will follow them. The weight of the order caused Jacob to let out a low growl and sit on the couch to run his hands through his hair in agitation. Hermione turned on the TV and they wordlessly watched daytime programs until Jared and Kim wandered back into the house. Kim's eyes were slightly red and puffy and she wouldn't look at Jared. All right, you lot need to leave, Kim and I need a spot of girly time. She gave Sam a quick peck on the cheek and shooed all the boys out. Jared shot Kim one last look of longing and followed everyone else out into the woods. With open arms, Hermione enveloped Kim in a comforting hug as the girl cried. Hermione let her get all her emotions out as they sat on the couch. She rubbed soothing circles on Kim's back and smoothed down her inky black hair. After about an hour, Kim had her head in Hermione's lap as her sobs and cries were reduced to quiet sniffling. Hermione hummed a noise in her throat as acknowledgement. Without the imprinting, do you think Sam would have ever been with you? I've had a few months to think about Kim, and I have had my doubts that this is just all some magical force making him love me and vice versa. But I know for a fact that love cannot be manufactured. I'm not sure how much Jared told you, but with the pack, we're all one big family, we have no secrets. With the link when they phase, it's almost impossible to keep secrets and we have such a bond that we don't want to keep secrets. He only told me about the wolves and imprinting. Well, they're not the only supernatural thing around. I'm a witch. I went to school for 7 years in Scotland learning to hone and control my magic. A soft laugh escaped Hermione at the skeptical look on Kim's face. Always one to prove herself. Hermione extracted her wand for its disillusioned holster on her arm and with a flick, she turned one of the magazines on the table into a floppy-eared rabbit and turned it back to its original state. Wow, that's so great. Kim happily sat up and stared at Hermione with wide eyes. What else can you do? That's for another time, but there are love potions, lust potions, and all kinds of spells that try to imitate love. But it's impossible. They can create a strong attraction or infatuation, but not true love. The way I would explain imprinting would be fate's way of giving them a giant push in the right direction. You guys are two halves of a whole. Things may seem fast. Hell, Sam and I have only been together for a few months, but he proposed last night. Aren't you worried about what people will think? Letting out an unladylike snort, Hermione gave her a sardonic smile. I've given up caring what people thought a long time ago. Only the people I love and consider my family are the one whose opinion I worry about. And if they really loved me, they would support my decisions, and if it was the wrong one, I might get an "I told you so," but they would help me back to my feet and brush off my bum before barreling on. I'm just so confused, and that's okay. No one is asking you to just jump into his arms, he will be whatever you need him to. Sam and I were friends for a long time before we got together. Whatever feels right, don't let anything hold you back, life's too short for that. Trust me, I've been through a war. Surprise stole over Kim's face. I promise I'll tell you soon, like I said. We'll be seeing a lot of each other. You can choose to reject the imprint, but you will always have the pack's protection whether you want it or not. You go at a pace comfortable for you. Hermione got up to let what she had said so far sink in and made a pot of tea. The tray levitated behind her as she sat back on the couch and settled in for the rest of their talk. Here, this will help. She poured Kim a cup and let Kim doctor it up how she felt. The two drank their tea in silence until Hermione saw some of the tension in Kim's shoulders lessen. Kim, I used to rely solely on logic. I wouldn't do something unless I made a pros and cons list, slept on it for a week, and consulted every book I could get my hands on. Through the years, I've had to rely more on my instincts than logic, and my instincts have never been wrong. What are yours telling you? The darker-skinned girl gazed silently out the window and into the wooded area. To grab a hold of Jared and never let go. Then do it. Sometimes it's good to be selfish, especially on matters of the heart. Taking a chance with Sam was one of the best things I've ever done. Kim smiled at Hermione and the two girls shared a hug. Thank you. I don't know what I would have done without you. It's no problem, we're sisters now. I need some estrogen in this testosterone pool, we ladies have to stick together, the fates have thrown us to the wolves." They giggled at Hermione's pun. "You're always welcome here, day or night, even if no one's home. This is kind of pack central and I don't lock the doors anyway. Make yourself at home. I want you to be comfortable here in this crazy mess. If you ever need anything, don't hesitate to ask. Food, shelter, money, anything, I'm here for you." Kim smiled at Hermione. And they got up to start lunch for the boys. The wolves didn't descend on the house until the early afternoon, and the girls rolled their eyes as they filed into the kitchen and eyed the food set around the table. Jared's gaze immediately landed on Kim and she gave him a shy smile which he returned with a face-splitting grin. Hermione received a kiss on the cheek from Paul, Jared, Jacob, and M. Bri, and Sam smothered her face with kisses. After the man-wolves were settled around the table, they waited for the girls to get their plates before shoveling piles of food onto their plates. When they were done, Kim and Hermione once again cleaned up as Sam held a pack meeting about patrols and training. Hermione rolled her eyes at Embry and Jared as they placed continuous bets on everything, and Sam shot her a look before he too rolled his eyes. She was about to say something when a loud crack of apparition sounded somewhere outside. "Bugger." Hermione pushed past Kim and picked her discard. D wound up off the counter before she tore outside the wards she erected around the house, alerting her to a hostile guest. She was greeted with the sight of Antonin Dolohov stalking towards her house with a maniacal grin on his face. Hermione heard the boys and Kim behind her as she jumped off the porch, and she erected a protective dome around herself and Dolohov so her boys and Kim wouldn't get hurt. Hermione regarded Dolohov warily and her war instincts kicked in, and she rolled out of the way as he shot a curse at her and she began firing some of her own. "There's my girl. You know I've missed you. You can try to run all you want, but I'll always find you, Granger." Dolohov smiled nastily at her as he parried her attacks and flung out his own. Her instincts catalogued that the 5 wolves had phased and were trying to ram the shield she put up but were having no luck. She could scarcely see them give up and phase back, and they were all yelling at her, but her mind was focused on the bat, TLE, and the Death Eater in front of her to hear what they were saying. Things took a turn for the worst when she hesitated a bit too long before dodging a curse, and she was hit with a slicing hex across her shoulder. Hermione grunted in pain and rolled out of the way as Dolohov moved towards physical violence and tried to bring his foot down on her wrist. Her right leg came out and connected with the back of his knees, causing him to fall. He tried to lunge at her from his position on the ground and quickly rolled into a backwards tumble and used her momentum in her hands to spring off the ground and land on her feet. For the most of the battle, they had been using non-verbal spells, but Hermione felt her strength seeping away as her shoulder bled. Bombarda. The spot where Dolohov had been erupted and earth and rocks flew every which way. The bystanders watched in awe as their alpha female and the mysterious man fired dangerous bright lights at each other and battled. The man suddenly vanished and a black smoke took his place and charged the girl. When they clashed, they watched as she disappeared and a white smoke appeared. The two smokes twisted and turned violently in the air, bouncing off the protections for a few minutes before Hermione suddenly dropped to the ground with the side of her head bleeding and the man landing next to her. He pointed his wand at her and whispered something. They watched in morbid fascination as her whole body tensed and her back bowed off the ground. Hermione tried to hold it in, but it was no use. A blood-curdling scream erupted from her lips as the crucio tore through her body. Blinding red-hot pain tore her muscles apart and shattered her bones as she was held under the curse. With a maniacal laugh, Dolohov lifted the curse and kicked her roughly in the stomach. He straddled her and wrapped his hands around her neck. "I'm going to enjoy watching the life leave your eyes, Mudblood, then killing every single one of your precious new friends over there." Hermione felt a jolt of adrenaline at the mention of her new family and with surprising strength, bucked Dolohov off her. With the aftershocks still raging through her body, Hermione shakily pushed herself onto all fours and spit out a mouthful of blood. Dolohov was busy laughing at Hermione to notice her steel herself and launch her body at him. She knocked his wand his hand and heard a satisfying crunch as her fist connected with his nose. Dolohov was in a slight daze as he hit his head hard on the unforgiving ground, and Hermione searched wildly for her wand. She spotted it and dove for it. Incarcerus. Thick ropes shot out of her wand and bound the cursing Death Eater. Silencio. Hermione bent over and placed her hands on her knees and gulped in heady bouts of air in her protesting lungs. The dull roar of her boys yelling and Kim's racking sobs brought her back to the fact that she had an audience, and she shakily stood up straight to face them. Sam was being restrained by Paul, Embry, Jared, and Jacob, and Kim was cowering in the doorway with wide eyes. A cool breeze swept by them and brought Hermione's attention to her steadily bleeding shoulder. Bloody hell! She sank to her knees and waved her wand in a complicated pattern, and the protections dropped and she was swarmed by the pack. Expecto Patronum! Her silvery wolf burst from her wand and trotted over to her. Tell Harry to get over here as fast as he can with Severus, Lucius, and Kingsley. With a silent howl, the wolf was gone. Fuck Hermione. What the hell was that? She looked into Sam's terrified, angry eyes and cupped his cheek with her good hand. Make sure he doesn't get away. Hermione fought the darkness trying take over when she heard the pops of help and heard a frantic Harry calling her name. God damn it, Hermione. Sam's wolf was steadily rising to the forefront as he watched his mate bleed, and although he knew Harry, the wolf saw everyone except the pack as a threat. Low warning growls rumbled in his chest and he bared his teeth at the raven-haired boy. Sam, it's okay, they're going to help me. Black spots dotted her vision and she felt the cool G-lass of a file against her lips, and she automatically swallowed while the deep baritone voice of Severus chanted spell after spell, healing her shoulder and other various injuries she sustained. Her teeth grit as her shoulder stitched itself back together and the dark magic was pulled from her veins. She greedily leached off the warmth Sam was providing as she sat propped up in between his legs. After several more potions she finally felt some of her strength return, but her body still randomly convulsed from the aftershocks of the Cruciatus curse. Warm hands gently scooped her up and she fought against the nausea of the motion as she was moved into the house. I think I have a concussion, Hermione grumbled before she promptly leaned over and vomited. Someone waved their wand and the mess disappeared from Hermione and Sam as he gently set her down in their bed. All right, everyone out. Madame Pomfrey bustled in and shooed everyone out, except Sam, who wouldn't leave Hermione's side. I swear, Miss Granger, between you and Mr. Potter, I don't know who spends more time under my care. The matronly witch bustled around while tending to Hermione's wounds. Hermione had a slight concussion, 2 fractured ribs, a broken knuckle, and a bruised neck along with other small bruises and scrapes. The end. Thanks for watching. Subscribe our channel for more.